Gotta let the beat drop.
You gotta let it drop.
Gotta let it drop.
It kind of gets you. It's almost like the intro music for a wrestler. You know, you gotta let it go a little bit. Wrestlers don't just come right out, right?
No. This would be...
You get the strobe lights first.
Pyro.
Exactly. Fire.
This would be
fireworks.
Decent, wrestling, wrestler music for like a heel, you know?
Oh yeah, it's got to be. Yeah. It's got to be an evil guy.
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Kind of like us.
This is
right?
This is the instrumental of an Eminem track. Yeah.
I think actually, believe it or not, I think I actually did know that.
Yeah,
I did know that.
Till I Collapse. I love this song too.
I was an Eminem fan back in the day.
Yeah,
you like the green ones, not the peanut ones.
Oh jeez. Well, the green, you know what they said about the green ones?
Hit home runs every time you had a green one. And also it made you a little better in certain
like they're like
places.
The candy version of oysters.
That's right. Yeah. Made you better in certain places, certain things.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like rhinoceros horn.
Can we give the Mariners some green M&Ms, Slickhawk? Can we give the Mariners some green M&Ms? We demanded a sweep over the Oakland A's. Let's backtrack a little bit over the last week. We demanded a sweep. We did not request. We demanded a sweep over the Oakland A's.
I think we knew what was coming with the Astros, so we
kind of provided the sweep for us over the Oakland A's, and then you and I sat here and said, "Can you get one? Can you get one against the Astros to avoid disaster?" And the answer is a big, fat negative.
Well, here's the thing: they could have gotten one.
Hey, if games were only 6 or 7 innings long, we'd have been fine in this series.
3 quality starts from this staff. I mean, that's more than you should be asking for. And if you pull that off, I don't care if it's the Astros. I don't care if it's the Yankees from the 1920s. I mean, you should win a game.
One guy showed up offensively for the Seattle Mariners. One stinking guy showed up. I tweeted this out in the middle of the game so that the numbers are not quite exact because I haven't included like innings 6 through 9, but in the middle of the game yesterday, these were your numbers. Kyle Seager was 4 of 10 with 3 home runs and 4 RBIs in the series. 4 of 10, hitting .400 with 3 home runs and 4 RBIs. The rest of the team was 15 of 78 with no home runs and 1 RBI.
Wow.
Kyle Seager not only had outperformed the rest of the team combined, he had blasted the rest of the team combined.
You must have had some walks in there, too, if you only had 10 at bats.
Yeah, no one else stepped up. Yeah. No one else stepped up. The Mariners get swept. They're now 3.5 out, and I'm still not ready to play Dead Man Walking because I'm glutton for punishment.
Well,
but
let's see what happens with these Angels.
We're getting close.
I was doing some math.
This is the
2 games under right now, right?
Yes, this is the series against the Angels. They can either.
Do you have the standings there?
I do. As a matter of fact, I'm well prepared here.
The Twinkies, are they holding the wild card
spot? I got the old school. Oh, they are standings. The newspaper.
Are the Twins holding the second wild card spot?
The Twins are holding the first wild card spot at 72 and 67. The Angels are holding the second wild card. Or excuse me, Twins are the second wild card. The Angels are 1/2 game.
Okay,
on the outside
so they're 5
in.
games over right now.
The Twins, yes.
Yeah. I was thinking this. I was thinking 6 games over should get you there because I don't think anybody's really going to go on a run. So let's say that 84 and 78. Let's say it's 6 games over that gets you
I'm
there.
tracking with you.
I'm trying to have a little bit of optimism.
That's 15
and 7. Now that's winning your series.
That's a minimum.
That's you go out and win your series.
15 and 7 at a minimum, and it starts.
It's an uphill battle, but it's doable.
It starts right now.
I think we put it up on the board.
Okay.
And we count it down, and we just hope.
I can do that.
Yeah.
I can live with 15 and 7, and I think that might, in fact, because if you go 15 and 7, you're going to be beating teams like the Angels that you're competing with and going to be knocking down in the process.
Right.
I can deal with that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right, we'll do that.
And we don't even have a game today, so we don't have to put it up until tomorrow.
That's true.
Oh, there is a game in the NFL, though, today. The Patriots will take on the Chiefs tonight to kick things off. What else is going on in the world of sports? How about this story? Former Notre Dame linebacker suing the university for allegedly concealing results from an MRI and instructing him to keep playing while he was risking a spinal cord injury. Scary story there. Another scary story with the hurricane, impending hurricane. 16th ranked Miami has canceled their home game against Arkansas State. Storm knocked out of the playoffs in Phoenix last night. And for the first time since 1981, all 4 semifinalists of the U.S. Open on the women's side are Americans. Let's go. Oh.
The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea. With a rollicking song, he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. His face is weather-beaten. He wears a hooded sash, with a silver hat about his head, and a bristling black mustache. He growls as he storms the country, a villain big and bold. And the trees all shake and quiver and quake as he robs them of their gold. The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won.
Football is here. It is officially here. After almost exactly 7 months. Almost 7 months to the day since the Atlanta Falcons did the inexplicable.
They did the Golden State Warriors. They did Cleveland Indians.
It was worse, man. Golden State was, they were up 3-1. But up 3-1 in a series, I don't think is like up 28-3 in a game.
Warriors blew a 3-1 lead. 28-3 in the third quarter.
28-3 in the third quarter. Unbelievable. And here we go again. And it's amazing how the attitude of those two teams and the outlook of those two teams is resting so much on what happened in that football game. When in reality, let's face it, did what happened in that game really impact this season at all? I mean, maybe on the Falcons side, just because we have a lot of a track record of teams that lose the Super Bowl just not doing very well the next year, and then the whole Super Bowl hangover thing. But as far as the Patriots go, how about if Tom Brady's lasting image was him just diving at the feet of that defensive player, I don't forget who it was, going into the end zone for a pick six, and that was going to be it. And everybody would have been talking about the death knell of Tom Brady and how his career, he's great, but, he just didn't do it in that Super Bowl. He couldn't even lead them to a touchdown in that Super Bowl. He threw a pick six in the Super Bowl. The days of Brady are over. The days of the Patriots are over. That would be the narrative for a lot of people going into the season.
Would it?
I think so. I think so. If that final score would have been 31-6, 34-3, which very easily could have at that point, the narrative would have been much different.
With Peyton Manning after 43-8, it was easy to draw that narrative because he'd had the neck surgery. There were questions about if he would ever come back again, but then he has the record-breaking year and with that offense, and they got waxed. And even then, I didn't hear that much with Manning, like, is it done, is he over? Even though it was clear he was in the twilight of his career because of his neck, and then his arm strength kind of went away the next year. But so I don't think we even heard it that much with Peyton Manning, do I mean, well, I guess he had a couple years after that.
Yeah. No, it's the talk of the Patriots just running away with this league again. It's died down a little bit, which is good because that's all I heard in the summertime. June, July, August, forget about it. The Patriots are going to win it again. The numbers, they were like 5-1, 4-1 to win the Super Bowl. Everything's kind of settled down a little bit, but it'll be interesting to see that game tonight. I mean, I think they at least have a test on their hands. It's a home game, but at least they have a test on their hands. They're not playing, some cupcake to start the season. The Chiefs are always a pretty good team with Andy Reid. But that's tonight. What's going on right now and what went on yesterday, what captivated our attention yesterday, a singular story, and that, of course, being the Michael Bennett story. It broke as we were on the air yesterday. which is always has two impacts. One, it's exciting when something breaks in the middle of the show because you can get some raw feelings.
Yeah.
But then also
it's also rare.
It's also rare, but it's also a little bit dangerous because, especially in a situation like this, and this was my whole point yesterday during the show when I kept repeating myself, I want to get as many facts as possible. I want to get as many facts as possible before I make any sweeping judgments on what happened in this case. When you get the stories that break like that, you don't get all the facts as you will have a little bit later on. And now, while we still don't have all the facts, we have more of the facts now. At least we have another side of the story now. But what I wanted to do at the beginning here is kind of give everybody a synopsis of people's reactions to the Michael Bennett story. Of course, the story of him being put down on the sidewalk by a Las Vegas police officer on the night of the Mayweather-McGregor fight, put in handcuffs, according to him, and according to some, not the greatest still shot picture I've ever seen, but at least it looks like over the still shot picture we have that, in fact, a gun was held to his head. So we're going to start with we'll start with Michael Bennett and an emotional press conference he had yesterday. We'll go through. We'll play a couple minutes of that, a couple minutes of Pete Carroll, Richard Sherman, the Vegas response, and then Michael Bennett's brother, Martellus. So here is Michael Bennett from yesterday.
Obviously, I would hate to be up here through these circumstances. I happen to be up here talking about it. It's a traumatic experience for me, my family, and it sucks that the country that we live in now, sometimes you get profiled for the color of your skin, and it's a tough situation for me. Do I think every police officer is bad? No, I don't believe that. Do I believe there's some people out there that judge people on the color of their skin? I do believe that, and I'm just focused on trying to push forward and keep continuously championing the quest for justice for people, keep pushing equality for oppressed people, and that's just what I'm about and what I keep doing. But
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But for me, it's like I said, I just want to thank my wife for supporting me. Without her, I wouldn't be able to have the strength to be up here right now. But and the whole time through the whole situation, all I could think about was my wife and my kids. I think people sometimes you think that the game is the most important thing, but for me, the whole time I wasn't thinking about the Super Bowl. I wasn't thinking about what play we were going to run against Green Bay or sacking Aaron Rodgers. I was just literally thinking about my wife and children and how much they mean to me.
Have you heard anything from the Las Vegas Police Department or anything since your statements?
No, I'm just letting my legal team and my reps take care of it. I'm trying to just come in, try to focus on the game, try to focus at the task at hand, and let everything take care of itself. But like I said, this is a tragic situation for me. I hate to be up here at this moment. Like I said, there's a lot of people who experienced what I experienced at that moment, and they're not here to live to tell their story. I think about Trayvon Martin. I think about Shirley Lyles. I think about Phil Castile, Tamir Rice. So many different people that had the experience that I had, and they're not here to tell the story. So that's what it is.
I hate to have you review what happened, but in the minute or so before the episode began, who were you with? What was happening on the sidewalk, and how did it play?
I can't go into that right now. Just trying to keep it forward about just my emotions, not trying to get into the details of the situation. Just here just to let you know that, like I said, it's an emotional moment for me. I know a lot of people are like, oh, did he want this on himself? I didn't ask for this moment. It just happened to be me. And I'm just lucky to be here to be able to speak about it. At any moment I could have made the wrong decision and whether move, it felt like I was resistant or doing something wrong, and you guys would be wearing, the Seahawks would be wearing the patch with number 72 on it. So I'm just lucky to be here right now and to be able to continuously fight for people, fight for the equality of all people, regardless of their color, regardless of their gender, regardless of all that. I'm just going to continuously do what I've been doing, it's a hard journey. Sometimes you feel like you're alone, but there's a lot of people who support me, and I just want to keep doing what I do.
Can you talk about?
It's not difficult to concentrate on football. I think at this point, it's the reality of what I live in every day. I think a lot of people, as a black man, you fear sometimes what could happen to you, the possibilities, if you're in the wrong situation at the wrong time, and you hope and you wish that everything that Martin Luther King said or the people before me, we hope that you be judged on the content of your character, not the color of your skin, but sometimes you get judged on that, and that's the reality that I live in. It's this when people ask why I sit down, and this is why. This is the things that I go through, what people go through that look like me, or people that's going through something differently.
So what support have you got? What support have you got from your organization and teammates?
I think you got good support. I think, of course, a lot of people. This is a tough situation for any organization. I think nobody wishes that their player is in this point. Nobody wishes that their player has to go through this. But of course, you have to sit down and be able to talk to people. And I think I got good support. I think if I didn't have good support, I wouldn't be able to have the strength to be up here right now. Because at any moment, this is a nervous situation. At some point in time, you're in the eyes of everybody in America, and everybody's waiting for you to make a mistake. And but this is the truth. I mean, I got great people around me. I thank the organization for their support, but this is bigger than me. There's a lot of things going on in the world right now with Houston, so there's a lot of things going on. So
that's Michael Bennett yesterday at the VMAC. Pete Carroll also spoke at the VMAC yesterday and gave a strongly worded statement.
Michael Bennett unfortunately experienced a horrendous incident on August 27th, and we're thankful that he's safe, and we take this opportunity to say that we stand in support of him and anyone facing inequalities. What happened with Michael is a classic illustration of the reality of inequalities that are demonstrated daily. And may this incident inspire all of us to respond with compassion when inequalities are brought to light, and allow us to have the courage to stand for change, because we can do better. We can do better than this. So,
when did he first tell you about what had happened? How soon did you find out?
It was the next morning, I think.
What was that conversation like?
Well, he just explained to me, really it was very emotional, and he was trying to convey, he couldn't help but convey, what had taken place and how it affected him and how he was really so changed by it.
What, in the meantime, since it happened, what were the considerations for him, the team, and what
he's been working on, how to take the next step, and he's anxious to kind of take this next step. He's been kind of holding on to this for a while, and so I think this will help him at this point to make sure that it's out there, and he's made a statement and all.
How have you noticed it affecting him since then?
It's been on a topic for us. You can tell it's hanging with him.
Physically, was he okay after that?
Yes.
How often have you had a player experience a similar situation as this that you had to deal with?
We've shared stories over the years. There's been stuff that's happened enough, more than I like to count. So yeah, we've been through these topics before. This one was very dramatic, and
Richard Sherman also spoke at the VMAC yesterday.
It's unfortunate. Obviously, happy that he made it out. Day in the life, though. I'm sure, as he said, something that he's been through before, I'm sure, and hopefully he doesn't have to go through again. But it's no amount of money, no amount of fame, no amount of notoriety that could keep you from things like that happening to you. So just an unfortunate part of life. I'm just thankful he made it out.
Did you experience anything like that personally?
Yeah. I've experienced that. I've been hemmed up, countless times when I was younger. You live in the inner city. That's just how it goes. They're trying to patrol the city. They're trying to keep the city safe. So, a black between the sizes of 6'4" and 5'3", and they're going to get you. But, thankfully I made it out alive. He made it out alive, and we moved past it.
Sure, from your experience, when a player suffers an injustice or a tough situation, how has this locker room responded?
With support. We've always supported our players and supported our guys, and that's all you can do is support, because Mike has literally sitting, taking a stand, protesting, doing everything you can to combat the exact thing that he experienced. And people are so worried about him sitting down during the national anthem that they completely miss that message a lot of times. They want to be more angry at the action than the message. And that's an unfortunate part of the world we live in nowadays. I wish that people would take it for what it is and make a difference and go out there and try to combat against racism, fascism, unnecessary violence. A guy being discriminated against, he was doing nothing wrong. I mean, you can't go outside, you can't be out, you can't do this, what can you do? So hopefully people will start to do the necessary things that it takes to make a change.
Do you think more teammates might join him in the protest because of this incident?
I'm not sure. Potentially. But, guys are trying to make a difference in other ways. And I think guys will do more to press their initiatives and press their foundations and donate money and try their best to make a difference in other ways, because it's starting to become apparent that kneeling, what Colin did, obviously didn't have much of an impact on what's going on in society, and Mike sitting and trying to make a difference, and they're passing judgment and criticizing his actions instead of trying to make a difference and trying to do things to change it. So we're just going to continue to look for steps and look for things that we can do to try to change society and give people more equality.
What is the best way to go about doing that?
I wish I knew. If I knew it, I'd be doing it. I'd be doing more. Giving money to different causes, and that's everything. That's giving more money to the police department so that they can have more people. They can better educate their officers. Giving money to the people who've dealt with this violence, who've lost sons and fathers and mothers to this violence, and try to help them. But I have no idea, honestly. If I knew, I promise you I'd be doing as much of that as I could.
That's Richard Sherman. You've heard from the Seahawks side now, and finally we will play a portion of the Las Vegas Police Department's response.
At 1:30 a.m. on the 27th, approximately 3 hours after the boxing match ended, an active shooter call came into the LVMPD Communications Center that originated outside of the Dre's nightclub at the Cromwell. Metro officers immediately responded to the scene and encountered thousands of patrons in the casino and nightclub. As officers entered the casino floor, they were met with large groups of people running for cover, laying on the ground hiding, and people screaming. Casino signage, chairs, and stanchions were knocked over inside of the casino. With very little information as to who the shooter was or the shooter's location, our officers pushed past the fleeing crowds and began immediately converging on the reported threat. One of the teams that cleared the casino then exited the casino at the door to regroup and were redirected back towards the Dre's nightclub inside of the casino. As they moved towards the nightclub, an individual later identified as Bennett was seen crouched down behind a gaming machine as the officers approached. Once Bennett was in the officer's view, he quickly ran out of the south doors, jumped over a wall onto Flamingo Road east of Las Vegas Boulevard into traffic. Due to Bennett's actions and the information the officers had at the time, they believed Bennett may have been involved in the shooting, and they gave chase. Bennett was placed into handcuffs and detained while officers determined whether or not he was involved in the original incident. He was detained for approximately 10 minutes and released. Mr. Bennett at the scene had the incident explained to him by a supervisor, and he said that he understood and that he had no problem with what the officers did, just the one that he claimed the officer had pointed a gun at his head. On that particular call, it's important to note that we later determined that there were no shots fired in the casino and the call was unfounded. There had been some sort of loud noise that we've not 100% been able to figure out exactly what it was, but a number of the people inside believe that a shooting had occurred. Like the rest of you, the LVMPD learned of Mr. Bennett's allegations just this morning, and an internal investigation has been opened. Part of that investigation includes pulling footage from dozens of body cameras, as well as other available outside footage to assist in our investigation. As of today, we know there are at least 126 videos associated with those cameras that we have to review. As you can imagine, it takes a significant amount of effort and time to review all of the video and available evidence. If the investigation reveals that any policies or training were violated, those officers will be held accountable. The LVMPD prides itself on being transparent and accountable to the public that we serve. As you know, here in our community, you've become accustomed to the release of information and associated video when force is used by our officers. Today, I'm going to show you a video taken from the camera of a sergeant who was leading the team in the casino search for the active shooter. You will see at the end of the video where officers gave chase to Mr. Bennett out of the casino over the wall onto Flamingo Boulevard. I can tell you today that I do know that the arresting officer did not activate his personal body camera, so that particular perspective cannot be viewed.
That's Under Sheriff Kevin McMahill of the Las Vegas Police Department in the press conference yesterday. Then they went and showed a video, approximately 5 or 6 minutes, of a video of some pandemonium in that casino, no question. So you've heard both sides of the story. After this break, I want to welcome in Hugh Millen. I want to get Slickhawk's up-to-date opinion on this situation, since the facts are different than they were yesterday. At least there's more of them than there was yesterday. We'll push the morning montage back to 6:45, Slick, so we'll do a little talking on this. And then we've got a lot to get to today. Seahawks at 7, Steve Phillips at 7:10. We've got the 12th man roundtable at 8 o'clock. We got Jason Locke at 4 at 9. It is a big football Thursday as we kick off. Big day, but obviously the big story locally and even nationally originating from here via Las Vegas. So we wanted to jump on that early here in the 6 o'clock hour because we've got a lot of other pressing matters to get to in the rest of the show. But you've heard from Michael Bennett, you've heard from Pete Carroll, heard from Richard Sherman, and you've heard from Las Vegas Police Under Sheriff Kevin McMahill. Slickhawk, I'll give you the floor here for a couple of minutes and simply ask you how you feel now, if any of your opinions from yesterday changed based upon what you've heard since then, and how you looking at this?
I mean, I don't think there's been any information that's come in since that would have changed my mind. Obviously, I watched the press conference, I watched the video, and I saw pretty much what Michael Bennett said is what I saw. I saw a police unit come through, sweep the casino, tell everybody to get down. Everybody did get down, including Michael Bennett, who was crouched, as we found out, behind a slot machine. Then as they came back through, I heard those same police officers yell for everybody to get out. Michael Bennett waited until the officers had passed, which is probably a pretty smart thing to do, because you figure as a team is coming through, clearing the area, everything behind them is going to be cleared. They're going into where the danger area would be. He waited until they passed, then he got up and ran, and they assumed that he was the person that had committed the crime, or that was firing the shots, which we found out later there were no gunshots. So they chased him. He ran. I'm sure he was scared. Jumped over the wall or the barrier, whatever you want to say, and that's when the incident happened, where he had a gun pointed to his head and was detained. So everything that I saw has been consistent in my mind with what Michael Bennett said.
I saw a couple of things in that video. I saw a lot of pandemonium. I saw a lot of African-American people, both men and women, in that video. Michael Bennett certainly was not the only one. And when we hear Michael Bennett assuming a profile, when we hear Pete Carroll come out very, very strong in defense of his player, I guess you would expect the team to do that. When he says inequalities brought to light, and then you hear the Las Vegas Police Department say that when Bennett saw the officers, he ran out, jumped over a wall, and ran into traffic. Something is not jiving with me. I still don't understand. I still don't understand if there is racial profiling going on. Do we know it's going on? Do we know racial profiling is going on? And if your answer to that question is yes, then how do we know? That's what I'm trying to get into my brain. How do we know that racial profiling was going on here in a room full of people of many, many races? How do we know racial profile was going on here?
Well, I'll answer that by saying this first. I've talked about this before. There are many different kinds of racism and many different kinds of profiling when it comes to something like this. Some of it conscious, some of it subconscious, some of it has been put in conditioned, I guess is the word, conditioned into people's heads into thinking a certain way, whether they mean to or not in certain situations. And so, in that moment, as Michael Bennett was seen crouched, elevating, and then fleeing, it was in that officer's mind that person is in his mind the person that's perpetrating the crime.
Because the officer said Mr. Bennett saw the officers and then ran.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part that I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out why Bennett would do that. I mean, why Bennett would see an officer and then run from an officer.
Well,
as the police are now. The police may be mistaken as well. I mean, Michael Bennett might have been doing the exact same thing that everybody else was doing, and that is following directions, get out of here, so they all get out of here.
Here's the thing. At that point, most of the casino in that area had been cleared.
Okay.
Most of it had been cleared. Like I said, he waited for them to pass. Then he got up from his position and took off. Now, I don't see him looking at them and then sprinting and taking off. But in the police officer's mind, he was the assailant because he was crouched down, looked in their direction, and took off the other way. Now, why in that police officer's mind did that make him the assailant? That's the question. And in Michael Bennett's mind, the fact that he was black played a factor in that.
And if the officer is correct and in his statement that said he quickly ran out, jumped over a wall, and into traffic onto Las Vegas Boulevard, why would he do that?
Was he in traffic when he was detained?
No, he was on the sidewalk.
He wasn't in traffic.
No.
He jumped over a wall.
Yeah, and I don't know why that was added to the statement. I mean, I wrote it down verbatim when I heard it. Quickly ran out, jumped over a wall and into traffic.
And which police officer was that? Was that the police officer whose body cam was switched off and maybe thought that that would be the only perspective?
Serious questions for the police. Why was there no camera? Why specifically was it Bennett that was detained? Why was a gun pulled? Oh, there are many questions to ask the Las Vegas Police Department on the handling.
But it all comes from the root of it was assumed that he was the perpetrator of the crime.
Mm-hmm. And that's the part that I'm trying to figure out. Why was he assumed the perpetrator of the crime? Was it because he was black?
The perpetrator or
welcome
a
you.
Suspect? Or one person under suspicion of being the perpetrator. Is there a distinction there?
I mean, they thought he's the guy.
So, according to their statements, it was suspicious for him. The manner in which he fled and how he fled, that was suspicious. Now, the part about there being gunshots, both the police at the time and Michael Bennett, everybody's kind of admitted that they thought there was gunshots. So at that point, they think there's a life-threatening event, right? The police thought it was a life-threatening event.
Right.
Michael Bennett and presumably others in the casino thought it was a life-threatening event. So I would just ask the police, what is the protocol for when you see a person that, as they said, as they described it, when Bennett saw the police, he ran, and they said that and other facts, which they did not disclose.
Correct, which I wish they would have disclosed.
Said Bennett's, what was viewed as suspicious activity, the way he fled, and other facts. What are the other facts? And what is the protocol when somebody in that situation, when they flee in the view of the police officer suspiciously, are they instructed just let that guy flee? Are they instructed to say stop, grab their gun? Are they instructed to go run him down and tackle him and find out why? Suspicious activity, obviously.
We didn't hear any of that from the police. We didn't hear that they tried to detain him, that they told him to stop, that they, that we didn't hear any of that from the police at all. I mean,
but it obviously that's a nebulous area. When somebody says, "Well, he fled in a manner that I viewed suspiciously," well, there's a lot of dynamics that go into, and possibly race is one, and possibly
absolutely
if race is one of those aspects that view that action as suspiciously, then we got a problem. I think in working backwards, if we all envision a day where there is far more racial harmony and these incidents are put behind, when we have to unite and condemn social injustice, and we have to deem it unacceptable, and we have to make it unlawful, and we have to execute punishment to those who perpetrate it. I think along the way to racial harmony, there's going to be a time when they write the history, and maybe well after we die. I think hundreds of years from now, everybody's going to kind of look the same. There's going to be kind of a mixed race thing where, black guys look pretty white and white guys look pretty black. But if we're going to advance racial harmony, I think that they will write the history of it, that there was an era when people could talk about it, and black people could talk about it with white people, and we could say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. This is what how I'm reasoning through this. Check me if I'm wrong, if I'm blind in this. Hey, that's a little bit misguided. Let's move away from that thought. Let's move towards this and reason this thing through. And so ultimately, I think there's going to be a period there where we say we are going to unite in condemnation of real racism. But we also cannot just affix a racism tag on every incident because it diffuses real racism. This may be a case of real racism. And if it is, it needs to be condemned. But I'm not certain that if Cassius Marsh was in that situation, that would not have happened to him.
The way that the police described it.
The way the police
described it. Not the way that Bennett described it. The way the police described it. Crouched by a slot machine.
Bennett also said yesterday there's things I can't get into. He was asked what happened before the video says I can't get into it. We're talking about two Hispanic officers that may have exercised racism in their mind when they determined that Bennett's actions were suspicious. Mm-hmm. They may have. They may not have. The Las Vegas police said that and other facts led them to believe. What are the other facts? And so look, I will, in this infinitesimal platform that I have, I'll join in the condemnation. I'll join that this has to be a vital factor to our society. But in the process, let's identify where, and I'm not talking about, some burden of proof. I mean, just a reasonable person's sniff test. A reasonable, does it smell like freaking racism? You know what? Let's go with the assumption that well could be racism. And so I'm kind of right there. I'm kind of teetering. I'm sniffing, and I'm certainly saying, what the hell is that smell? And it could be racism. Yeah. But I'm not sure it is. It could be rotten eggs. It could be the gas line leaking. Mm-hmm. They kind of smell the same. This, to me, has some odor of racism, but it's not unequivocally proven to me that there's racism here. Again, if Cassius Marsh had experienced if everything was the same, exactly the same, would Cassius Marsh have experienced that? And my answer is, I don't know. Maybe. And I don't want to set some standard in my own mind as me, a member like all of us in the court of a public opinion. I don't want to set some standard that that in these ambiguous situations where we don't, we're talking about people's frame of mind. Ultimately, how the hell do we prove what they're thinking? And to your point, Slick, maybe some of it's subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think
that's
more of what
real.
we're dealing
And that's
with
real.
here. I think that's more of what we'd be dealing with here. I don't think it's necessarily these officers hate black people. Not every police officer that acts in a racist manner, or that these stories come out, not all of them, in fact, I would say most of them are not, LAPD, Mark Furman, I hate black people, all that.
Yeah.
But there's a certain conditioning, I think, that goes into that, and that could be for white officers, Hispanic officers. It could even be for black police officers.
I'll tell you a quick story. When I was with the Huskies in the Orange Bowl, we stayed at the Omni Hotel. Mark Patterson, a wide receiver, white wide receiver, with whom I had gone to high school, and we were teammates and very good friends. We rented a kind of a late model Camaro, and during that time, we were having a lot of fun for 2 weeks in South Florida, going up to Fort Lauderdale and what have you. And a lot of times we had 6 or 7 guys jumped in. Half of the guys are black, half are white, and having a lot of good times. And on one incident, it was just Mark and me, and we kind of took a turn. We were looking for gas. Kind of took, and before we knew it, we were in a really, really rough part of town. And we pull over and ask this black woman, "Hey, do you know where there's gas? We were really low on gas. Do you know where there's a gas station?" She kind of points in a direction. Well, 20 seconds later, flashing lights, and through a PA system, "Get out of the car, put your hands up against the wall." Wow, this is really excessive. We get out, hands up. It's a scary situation. 2 black cops get out of this. It's literally like a big police van. One has a gun drawn. One has his billy pipe drawn. So what are you guys doing in here? Well, we're lost. He says, well, why did you talk to that woman? He says, well, we're looking for gas. Cop goes over and looks at looks in the window to see the gas gauge, whether it's empty or not, to see if we're lying about that. He sees that it's empty. He says, "Why are you guys here?" He says, "Well, we're at the University of Washington football team. We're here to play a football game." Well, to their credit, the situation diffused very rapidly. Put their guns away, put the billy thing. Okay, didn't have to be against the wall anymore. And he said, "Look, the only white people in a neighborhood like this, in a car like that, are selling drugs. And when you stopped that black woman to talk to her, we made the assumption that you were trying to sell drugs to her." And then he said, "Now what I want you to do is I want you to go down to such and such street, go down to Lincoln, turn right, and don't stop until you get to Jefferson." He said, and I will never forget this. He said, "Do not stop at any stop signs or any stop lights."
He wants you to go through them.
He says, "Do not stop at any stop signs or any stop lights. These people will rob you right out of your car." That's word for word what he said. And I'm thinking, well, if it's that dangerous, why don't you just escort us till you get there, right?
Right? Can you turn your lights on for us, please?
So look, is it anything like what Michael Bennett experienced? Of course not. But there's racial profiling, as you said, that takes place. In this case, it was 2 black officers. And we got racially profiled all in one stop. We got racially profiled, and the neighborhood that he's protecting was racially profiled, or at least generalizations were made about. So, but it doesn't mean that. I look and I say there's 4 types of incident, and I knew I was going to have to comment on this. It's hard sometimes for white guys to talk about it because you make a mistake, you can really, you can really regret what you might say. But you know what? I'm not going to get in my truck today at 10 o'clock and say, you know what? I was too scared to freaking talk about this subject. Okay? I think that as we advance to racial harmony, I think we need to have the discussions. And black people need to be able to say to white dude, "Hey, you're not seeing this, man. You need to check. There's something you have blinders on." And the white people have to say, "You know what? That's a damn good point." And then I think white, we have to say, hang on. Are we certain that there's racism here? and blacks have to stop and say, maybe it isn't. And maybe this is, Slick, Dick, maybe this is racism. And if it is, damn it, let's condemn the hell out of it. But in the absence of, again, a reasonable sniff test, I just don't know. I think we have 4 types of incidents. I have a dear friend who I respect the hell out of. Black guy last night, I called him. I looked at my call log after a call. It was 55 minutes. We talked for almost an hour. Shared all of this stuff. Had a great interaction with this. And in thinking this through, I was, there's 4 types of police interaction. Okay, let's start with the worst. The worst is police misconduct that has racial motivation. All right, let's call that incident A. Mm-hmm. The worst kind. Incident B is police misconduct that is not racially motivated. Like what I told you yesterday when I was told to freeze when I was just walking through my own house of framing, and I had a gun pointed at me, down on my knees, hands clasped behind me. Okay, so that's police misconduct, not racially motivated. Then there are incidents where police misconduct is alleged, but an all-knowing entity would say, you know what? Actually, police conduct was followed, and that is a misapplication or in essence, a false accusation of police misconduct. Okay, that would be item C, and then item D is an item where there is no dispute. There's police action, and it's the police follow their conduct. Everybody knows that it's whether it's a black person on the other end or a white person. Item D is something where there's really no dispute. So we have to. What are the percentages? Where are we on this? And sometimes when there's police misconduct, it's not racially motivated, and sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But let's filter this thing through reasonably, not have some unreasonable standard of proof on this. I don't know where that incident happened, but I know this. I know Pete Carroll he'd be an idiot not to back his team in this. Now, where his heart is, I'm going to assume his heart is where as he expressed it. But I also know that his head is smart enough to defend Michael Bennett. I don't want to have rushed to judgments about the police in a manner. Sometimes that generalization can be just the same. It's eerily similar to what's being accused, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I want to hear Michael Bennett said there's things I can't talk about. Both parties said there's things I can't talk about. Michael Bennett said
we need to hear him.
And the Las Vegas police said Michael Bennett's suspicious activity and other facts. What the hell are the other facts? And go into detail as to Michael Bennett's suspicious activity. They said when the police came upon him, he fled in a manner that they viewed as suspicious. Okay, how are you trained to determine suspicious activity that would warrant you putting a guy face down and handcuffing him?
And a gun to his head.
And a gun to his head, right? And is that how they're trained? Okay, how are you trained to make the subjective decision that is a person of suspicion, and that is the protocol when you encounter somebody you deem to be suspicious? Still unanswered questions.
A lot of unanswered questions, and hopefully they will be answered here in the weeks and months to come. At 6:55 on 950 KJR. Seahawks at 7. Greg Bell will talk about this and getting ready for a football game as well. Of course, Daily Schnoz is coming up. We've got an 8 o'clock roundtable. Curtis Crabtree will be here. Hugh Millen. Greg Bell will be in studio at 8. It's all coming up with Jason Lockman-Fora as well at 9 on 950 KJR. It's here. It's finally here. NFL season kicking off in less than 12 hours in Foxborough, Mass. With the Patriots and the Chiefs. Morning headlines. Mariners lose. Swept out of Safeco by the Houston Astros, a team that is clearly far superior than they are. 5-3 the final score. Eddie Diaz comes in a non-save situation, mind you there, Slickhawk. A non-save situation in a 3-3 game allows a 2-run home run in the ninth, and the Mariners fall to 2 games under 500, 3.5 games out of the wild card. Other baseball news: Reds have lost speedster Billy Hamilton for the season with a broken thumb. The NFL has released a statement in response to Tom Brady's wife, Giselle, claiming that he had concussions. The league states there are no records of Brady suffering a head injury or a concussion or reported any signs of symptoms of one. Packer coach Mike McCarthy says that right tackle Brian Bulaga will go through the early stages of practicing and then be evaluated to see if he can play this week. And number 1 overall pick Myles Garrett tweaks his ankle in practice. He could miss the opener and potentially more time. Let's get to our friend Greg Bell, shall we? Slickhawk's having a conversation with Greg Bell on the phone in there. Let's go.
Brian Bulaga.
Yes, sir.
What's the injury there? Just so...
what was it?
He's the
talented
tackle.
Let's ask Greg Bell. Greg's now off with Slickhawk. Slickhawk was having his own radio show in there with Greg Bell.
No, I called him on his cell because I thought he'd be driving on his way in, but he was still at his home, so I recalled him on his house.
Oh, gotcha.
That's what happened.
Gotcha. Well, let's start with that question from Hugh Millen. Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys been?
We'll go short with you because we're going to see you in an hour anyway. So we'll.
Okay. It's like that. Okay.
we're gonna get plenty of Greg Bell here at 8:00 for the roundtable. Brian Bulaga of the Packers. Hugh just asked what's the nature of the injury and how serious are they thinking that is, because that could be a big loss for the Green Bay Packers.
Started all 16 games at right tackle last season. He left practice. What is it now? 2 weeks ago for the Packers with an ankle injury. He didn't play the last 2 preseason games. He didn't practice Monday, which is kind of a throwaway practice day of this week. And he did practice on Wednesday, so that would indicate that he's going to play on Sunday. So it'll be his first game since the second preseason game. So we in Seattle expect him to be on the field playing.
Injury-wise for the Seahawks, Thomas Rawls' status was uncertain, and then Pete Carroll comes out and says, well, they've named their starter, but I'm not telling, and then Rawls practices fully. So is it just a safe assumption that the starter that he's not telling us about is in fact Thomas Rawls?
I think so, and the fact that Rawls was listed as a full participant in practice yesterday suggests that he's going to play. The Wednesday practice is the most full one of any game week, and if you're practicing fully on that day, indications are you're going to play. I thought it was a little bit of gamesmanship, and Carroll making it sound like Rawls was more questionable than not. He actually said that Rawls would be listed as questionable as of right now. He did say Rawls has a high ankle sprain, which, of course, those tend to linger. Mm-hmm. It's not just a regular sprain. Rawls he played in the very first preseason game at the Chargers. That was on August 13th. He hasn't played since. 2 carries, 5 yards, and that's it. He did say, Carroll did, that if Eddie Lacy needs to do it, he's ready for a full load. And somebody asked him if that's 20, 25 carries, and he said yes. He could do 20, 25 carries, and boy, would Eddie Lacy love a chance to do that on Sunday.
He was also asked if Eddie Lacy made weight yesterday, and the response that I heard was, he's done great, which Greg rhymes with he made weight, but it's not exactly the same as he made weight. So do you think Eddie Lacy's going to get that last little bonus that he was up for?
Don't know. He was pretty inconclusive about that.
Yes,
I do know the Seahawks don't mind him being close to 250 pounds. Starting in September through the rest of the regular season, those weight clauses for each month was 245 pounds. So really it's a matter of whether he wants $55,000 every month from now through December, because the Seahawks don't mind him being big. And Pete Carroll has said, we want a big back. I think they want him to be different than Thomas Rawls in that way. So they don't mind if he's pushing 250. It's like I said, it's whether Lacy's going to get the extra money or not.
And then with C.J. Prosise, it looks like he's 100% now. Do his touches increase if Rawls' touches are limited, or is that a separate position, really? And C.J. Prosise is really the third down back, and it really doesn't matter what the status of a Lacy is going to a game or a status of a Rawls is going to a game. C.J.'s never really going to be that first and second down running back anyway.
Well, I could see that if Lacy or Rawls wasn't playing in a given game, that it would be more for Prosise. But I also know they're trying to find some touches for Chris Carson. At least they say they are. I think this offense in the last couple of years has sometimes been better when it's been in the 2-minute drill, and when they've gone into it, sometimes in the middle of quarters. And if they do that, that's going to be C.J. Prosise. So there will be times in defenses I think the game plan will call for C.J. Prosise to hurry up in the middle of quarters, and he'll get more touches and opportunities just by virtue of that.
Everybody else healthy going into this one? Are we missing anything?
Nick Vannett has a concussion.
Okay.
He practiced. He's coming back from that. He practiced yesterday, so that means he's been cleared by doctors. Delano Hill, the backup rookie free safety, shoulder injury, limited in practice. Frank Clark's still limited by the wrist injury that he had for the last couple of weeks of preseason. He's listed as limited in practice on Wednesday.
And the Regenican 5's okay?
Yeah, I asked Cliff Averill what that made him do, what it did for him to go get this Regenikine, and he said it made him feel like he was 22, made his knees feel like he was 22. Now,
wow.
Averill said that it was with his knees, and it was for maintenance, and that's mostly what everybody else went for, even though Averill had sports hernia surgery in the offseason. Averill said it wasn't related to that. So it sounds like all these guys went for almost mostly knee and not injuries, but maintaining and recuperating knees. But yeah, Averill swears by it. The one guy from that group that it sounds like may not play is Michael Wilhoit, who isn't back from a calf injury yet. He did not participate at all in practice yesterday. That means Terrence Garvin's probably going to start at strong side linebacker in Green Bay. But as we've talked about, guys, especially against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, they're going to be in nickel the majority of the time, which means Garvin won't play as much as Jeremy Lane at nickel and Shaq Griffin on the outside. And again, Aaron Rodgers is going to target Shaq Griffin a ton.
Oh,
I mean,
yes,
if they throw 30 times, I bet 20 of them are going to be Griffin's way.
We are going to talk about that in about 45 minutes when you join us. You must live close to the studio because you can't get anywhere at 7:15 around here. So we'll see you in a bit.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You bet. That's our friend Greg Bell, brought to you by our friends at Michael's Subaru Volkswagen. Time for Steve Phillips.
It's time for our weekly conversation with former GM and MLB Network Steve Phillips.
Brought to you by the Puget Sound Audi dealers. Before you make any new car decision, be sure to think Audi and the area's most popular SUV, the Audi Q5.
Well, Steve, we got the sweep over Oakland, and they did what they do to us, and that's get our hopes up. And then the Houston Astros just had to pick up Justin Verlander and start him for the first time against our team. And, yeah. And all of a sudden, we're back down to 3.5 games out. Is it over, Steve, for our beloved Mariners?
Well, it's never over till it's over. But, I mean, it's going to come down to getting really hot and maintaining it for some period of time to be able to overcome everybody else in the race. I mean, that's really the issue. Is it's not only how far out are you, but how many teams are in front of you and your timing of getting hot. And so the Astros, it wasn't only the Verlander deal. I honestly think that, and I lived through this in New York back in 2001. With the tragedy on September 11th, that when we came back after that, after the game had been stopped and kind of the world felt like it came to a dead stop for a period of time, and that once baseball picked back up, we had a different sort of inspiration. We had a different spring in our step. We had a motivation and a reason to play better and inspired baseball, and we did. And we made a run to try to get to the playoffs that year and came up a little short, but took it right to the end when we were kind of just limping along. And I think for the Astros, they had been licking their wounds and feeling sorry for themselves and somewhat victimized since the trade deadline when they didn't get anybody, and they'd been pouting and feeling sorry for themselves. And then I think they got a little bit of a wake-up call about perspective when the hurricane hit. And when they finally were able to go back home, then they made the Verlander deal. I think it has catapulted them forward in believing in themselves differently. And so it's not always who you play, it's when you play them. Because quite honestly, just before playing them now, you would have loved to have played the Astros because they weren't playing good baseball. So, look, it's going to take a Herculean effort. There's no question. At 3.5 games out, you've got Tampa in front at 3, Kansas City at 2.5, Texas at 2, Baltimore at 1, the Angels half game out, then you've got Minnesota in that second spot. So it's going to be nearly impossible, and it's going to take a Herculean effort. But they can make up 3.5 games. They just have to go on one of those winning streaks, kind of like what the Indians or Diamondbacks are on right now.
Right. Slickhawk mentioned at the beginning of the show he thought 15-7 might get it done, and I agree. That would get you at 6 games over, 84 and 78. And if you got the right wins, and looking at the schedule, the Mariners can get the right wins because two of those teams that you just mentioned that the Mariners are looking up on are the Angels and Texas. Well, you've got 6 more against the Angels and 4 more against Texas, so that's 10 games right there. You can take care of those two teams on your own and then maybe just get some help from the other two teams that maybe if they go just a 500 or slightly over 500, 15-7 would get it done at 84-78.
Yeah. Now remember, you're playing the Astros again.
Yes, one more time. Yeah.
You've got the Indians in the mix there, and the Indians don't look like they're going to lose a game again ever. I mean, they look right. that good right now. I mean, 14 consecutive games. This is the first time ever that we've had 2 concurrent winning streaks of at least 13 games or more in the history of baseball between the Indians and what the Diamondbacks are doing. And the Indians, over this streak, they're hitting .317 as a team. They're averaging 7 runs a game. They've got a team ERA at about 1.35. I mean, they are dominating and really look like the best team in the American League right now. And they're going to get Andrew Miller back, and Michael Brantley's going to come back, and Chisenhall's back. And so, they are a really good team playing really good baseball. So, yes, it can happen. It can get done. But it's going to take one of those really hot streaks, and it's going to be about winning at the right time if the Mariners are going to get there.
How close do you have to be with a week, 10 days left to go to make the decision that we're going to activate Felix, Iwakuma, and Paxton? Because in this weird Mariner universe that we've lived in this year, it seems like all 3 of those guys are literally on the exact same timetable, and it's about a week and a half from now. So it's just bizarre how it's all, you lose all these guys for a good chunk of the season. Then, hey, here you go. It's like September 23rd. You've got 8 games left, and you can have your 1, 2, and 3 starter back if you want.
Yeah, but it makes for what could be a really interesting end-of-year video, right? If they're able to bring it back and they pull it out. I mean, it's a pretty dramatic storybook ending to what could happen, but you almost worry that it's going to be too little too late. I mean, for me, as long as you're not mathematically eliminated and the doctors say they're good to go, I'm activating them. I'm giving them the ball and say, go get them. Just go shut them out. Just go out there and throw shutouts. It's all we want. We're not asking too much. Just go shut out the opposition. Yes, I know it's the Rangers and the Indians and the Angels that we're vying with, but look, I think the Angels are going to be right there in that second wild card spot in the final weekend. And if you can be within a couple games there and then sweep that series, you got a shot.
Yep. No, absolutely. How about you mentioned the Diamondbacks and the Indians, and Steve Phillips is joining us. He does on a weekly basis. Would you rather be Arizona now than L.A. going into the playoffs? Would you rather be Cleveland versus Houston? Which team would you rather be? The team that has shown over 4 months to be the best team by far in all of your respective league, or the team that's been good for 4 months and then unbelievably good for the last 2 weeks?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? This timing right now is where it's in a little bit of a precarious situation, because there's a part of me that thinks I'd love to be the Dodgers right now, because they've lost 11 out of 12, and people go, wait, why would you want to be the Dodgers? They've lost 11 out of 12. Because, what we've learned and what we understand is what goes up in baseball always comes down, and what is down always comes up, especially if you have a good team. And the streaky nature of the game and what can happen. And I could see a scenario where the Dodgers have lost 11 out of 12, then they turn around with a win, then they get a couple wins, then a loss, then they win out 3 or 4 more, and then they start to get that momentum and traction back to go and get hot in October. For the Indians and Diamondbacks, I mean, you almost worry that, it's like a team in the NCAA tournament going in undefeated. You're trying to win the 8 games to win the NCAA tournament, and, oh, by the way, you want to go for the unbeaten record, and it's almost too much. And so at some point, you kind of want to cool off a little bit so you can get momentum, because the postseason, we talk about it a lot, that once you get there, anybody can win, and it's not the best team, it's the team playing the best. And getting hot at the right time seems to impact baseball more than any other postseason that there is. Yep. And so there's a part of me that would almost rather be the Dodgers losing 11 out of 12 right now than the Diamondbacks winning 13 in a row, only because, and again, they've beaten the Dodgers, swept them twice, 6 games, and in the 13 games they won, because I know that the Dodgers are going to get hot. It's just a matter of whether it happens at exactly the right time that they need it. So, yeah, it seems weird to say that I'd rather be the losing team than the winning team, but I kind of would rather be that team right now.
I got to ask you about Apple Watch Gate, Steve, and what the heck is going on with the Red Sox and Yankees, and what type of punishment do you expect to see levied?
Yeah, boy, I saw a great tweet on this that late September, Apple coming out with a new watch. It's called the iCheat.
Very good.
So, that wasn't my idea. Somebody else had it. It was brilliant.
Let me ring the bell for you. How about that?
And so, yeah, it's pretty good. And so, look, here's the thing. Cheating in baseball has been part of it forever, right? Whether it's corking bats or pine tar or using the rosin bag or sunscreen or whatever that people have used over time, nail files, that sort of thing, PEDs. And there is some part of this that is performance enhancement. Right now it's using electronics instead of drugs, but it is performance enhancement. The rules are pretty clear that whatever your eyes allow you to see to dissect what the other team is doing with their signs, to try to figure out, their sequence of signs to know what pitch is coming, you're allowed to break that down and be able to share it with teammates all you want. Mm-hmm. If a guy's tipping pitches, if you can see it and watch it, great. But the idea of using electronics and then signaling during the course of a game to a hitter what pitch is coming is a direct violation of the rules, and the Red Sox violated the rules. They've admitted they violated the rules. They said it's been going on for a couple months. It's surprising that it took that long for somebody to find it out, but they did. And so they deserve a little bit of credit for being honest and say, yep, you got us. I don't like the way they've responded, being like, it's not really that big a deal. It is a big deal. Yeah. And if it's led to a game or two games of a difference in the season, well, what if they beat out the Yankees by a couple games? Maybe it's the difference in the season for them. So I think the commissioner is going to have to deal with it with a heavy hand. I think there will be a significant fine being handed down. And at the very least, I think the assistant trainer, who was in a horrible position because he's a guy making, $50,000, and you've got all these $1 million players that are, he feels like I've got to kind of go along with what they want me to do, and they want me to be the conduit to relay the information. What am I going to do, say no?
Right.
And so, but he's probably going to get suspended, and then the question is, do any of the executives or the manager get suspended for it? Because the buck stops with the guys in charge, and that's John Farrell in the dugout and Dave Dombrowski in the front office, although I 100% believe Dombrowski had no idea what was going on. And for Farrell, I find it hard to believe that he couldn't know what was going on. It's his dugout, his clubhouse, and he's got to hear the chatter in the dugout. So I don't know. I think that there will be a heavy penalty handed down with it, though.
Well, Steve, we always appreciate it. We hope we get a few wins this week, and maybe the Mariners are closer next week than they are right now to that wild card after a good series against the Angels. We appreciate you coming on each week.
You bet. My pleasure. Gotta believe.
There you go. That's Steve Phillips, brought to you by our friends at the Puget Sound Audi dealers. The Daily Schnoz comes up next. Where are we going? We're going Cleveland. Myles Garrett out at least a couple weeks, the number 1 overall pick. The Red Sox situation from a New York perspective, and Todd Lebo in Kansas City to kick off the season with the Chiefs and the Patriots tonight. 7:29 on 950 KJR Daily Schnoz time. We head first out to Cleveland, where you kick the season off this weekend with an old rivalry, an old AFC North rivalry, Steelers and the Browns. Tom Withers from the AP in Cleveland joining us. Hi, Tom.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and Cleveland, the laughing stock of the league last year with one win, but it seemed like in the offseason they had a pretty good one. The number 1 pick overall, who is now injured at least for a certain amount of time, but it seems like the arrow is pointing up for the Cleveland Browns and not sideways, which is not a good way to point when you were 1-15.
No, you're right about that. There is some renewed optimism and hope here. Unfortunately, with Myles Garrett now going down for who knows, at least this week, probably next, and I would think a few more with the dreaded high ankle sprain. So a little bit of a setback to, you're right, what has been a really nice positive preseason for the Browns.
So you think a couple of weeks for Deshaun? Is it potential that it could be longer, or is this something that they think is not going to be a long-term situation?
They really don't know at this point. Ankles are real tricky, and unfortunately for Myles Garrett, he's had a history of ankle injuries. He spent most of his last year at Texas A&M last season hobbled by a sprain to the other ankle. So They really don't know right now. Obviously, he's still got some swelling that's got to calm down. They were very vague in their release this morning and saying that his status will be updated in a couple of weeks. So I would imagine he's going to miss at least 2 games. Wouldn't shock me if he missed 4 or more.
Talk about this offense real quick, and then I know we got to let you go to a press conference. DeShone Kizer, the rookie quarterback out of Notre Dame. You've got Isaiah Crowell, still a very young running back entering the prime of his career, and then you're David Njoku, a tight end in his rookie year. I mean, how have these youngsters looked in training camp?
They all look good, but the real test begins on Sunday when they start playing the real guys and the starters, and quite a tough start for DeShone Kizer drawing the Steelers in his first one, but the kid's been very impressive on and off the field. He's got a real nice poise about him, a real smart kid. Apparently, according to the coaches, has grasped the playbook extremely well. So, the Browns just got to do a good job of protecting him, and I think they can do that by running the ball with Isaiah Crowell. They spent a lot of money in the offseason as well on that offensive line, so they've got to protect him, and he's got to protect himself. Kizer, can't hold on to the ball too long. He's got to be decisive. He's got to get rid of it. He's got to live to fight another down and try not to make too many plays. Otherwise, the sacks are going to mount quickly.
Well, as a fantasy owner of Isaiah Crowell, that's exactly what I wanted you to say, Tom. That is exact. Just feed the guy the ball behind a very good offensive line. Thanks, Tom. We appreciate it.
Hey, nice talking to you.
You bet. Tom Withers from Cleveland, story number 1 on the Daily Schnoz.
Here's another late development.
The Daily Schnoz. Jared Diamond joins us from the Wall Street Journal in New York to give us the latest on the whole Apple Watch story. We got an opinion from Steve Phillips here in the last segment. And Jared, what's the latest, at least from the New York perspective, as this another twist in the old Yankee-Red Sox rivalry, right?
Exactly. I think that's the perfect way of putting it. This is so much less about spying and Apple Watches than it is just gamesmanship between 2 longtime rivals who are now putting a modern twist on that rivalry. Look, the Yankees called out the Red Sox for using an Apple Watch to steal their signs. The Red Sox, in turn, who didn't exactly deny doing it, they were more just mad that the Yankees brought it to the commissioner. So what do? They turn around and say the Yankees are doing the same thing to them, and now the Red Sox say they have video of the Yankees filming one of their coaches in the dugout. I'm not saying this is wrong. It is wrong, and if they did this, both teams should be punished if they're found guilty of doing this. But in reality, if these were any other 2 teams, this would have been dealt with privately. But because the Yankees and Red Sox, we got a fun little piece of gamesmanship here.
We do, and then the accusation against the Yankees is what, a Yes Network camera that was spying on the Red Sox, and how do you know if it's just a camera that shows a ton of shots in the dugout like you'd see in any baseball game, or whether the camera's actually purposely trying to steal signs from the Red Sox?
Yeah, that's what who knows? Like, the Yankees were adamant that they didn't do this, that the Red Sox were just looking to make them look bad after the Yankees kind of embarrassed them. But now the Red Sox say they have video evidence of them filming their bench coach. The Red Sox say they actually had their bench coach move in the dugout to see if the camera had sort of trailed him. Who knows? Maybe they'll find something. I'm kind of the belief after hearing this that probably every team might be doing something kind of like this, and it's just sort of one of those things that everyone's agreed to sort of look the other way on, much like pitchers having illegal amounts of pine tar somewhere on their body. Every team says, well, we're doing the same thing, so we probably shouldn't call out that team for doing it. But I guess the situation here is that the Red Sox are being so blatant about it. They were being so obvious, they weren't even trying to hide it, that the Yankees felt. If you're going to make it that clear and you're looking to embarrass us by being so obvious about it, we have no choice but to call you out. So I think Rob Manfred will come down on the Red Sox, maybe the Yankees, maybe a fine, maybe a draft pick loss. If that, this is not going to be like the Astros-Cardinals hacking scandal where there was massive penalties put on the Cardinals. That was a federal crime. This is far from that.
Jared, appreciate it, man. It's going to be interesting how this all comes out. Appreciate it.
You got it.
You bet. Jared Diamond from the Wall Street Journal in New York, story number 2. We'll head to Kansas City next.
Today, we salute you, the loudest fans in football. You shout with Hawks pride from the clink and from your couch. You'll be shouting even more when you score big at Lucky Eagle Casino and Hotel during the $64,000 fantasy football kiosk game. So head over to Lucky Eagle, pick the pros, and score the cash. Then check out Craft House Sports Bar, where you can yell at our TVs. All 20 of them. Must be 21 or older and a Players Club member. Details at LuckyEagle.com.
I'm Bobby Wagner, honorary GM of Beacon Plumbing. We know you're...
This important bulletin from the United Press.
The Daily Schnoz.
Football is finally here, and when we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, we always go to our man from WHB in Kansas City, Todd Lebo. You ready for it, Todd? You get to kick it off, man. At least not in your city, but your beloved Chiefs get to kick it off.
That's pretty exciting. You know, this is not the spot the Chiefs get very often. I don't think it's really the matchup the league wanted. They wanted to get that Falcons-Patriots rematch, but the whole thing with Atlanta's new stadium and all that bit, so the Chiefs got slid into here, and it's pretty exciting. It's a very daunting task, though, for a team to go. The number on Brady is now, 50-something and 1 against AFC opponents in Foxborough in the last whatever years. So, and the one they lost was the last game of the year where they didn't try, so it doesn't look like a real good chance for the Chiefs, but it's a great opportunity to shock the world, I guess.
Well, I'm looking at the number. I mean, it's 9 points, and I know if you bet against the Patriots last year against the point spread, you got absolutely killed. I think they only lost 3 or 4 times all season long against the spread, but that just doesn't seem like a lot of respect being given to a team in the Chiefs that is supposed to be pretty good, and it's supposed to be every bit as good as the other teams in that division. I've seen. They looked at all the experts' predictions, and some of them have the Chiefs winning the division, let alone making the playoffs.
Well, they've really dominated the division, honestly. They're 11-1 in the last 12 against the division. They won the division last year. They've really dominated the Raiders as much as anybody. And the Raiders were the hot team last year, and the Chiefs beat them twice with Derek Carr both times. Wasn't like after he got hurt or anything. So, the Chiefs, they do well in the division. That's no doubt about that. They haven't, done as well against the teams like the Patriots or Steelers or the teams like that when they played them in the playoffs or in the regular season. And that's the challenge here. I mean, the place is going to be nuts, right? I mean, Tom Brady getting another Super Bowl ring, the banner comes unfurled, all that stuff is just really hard to go win. But, Alex Smith, for all the game management stuff that he gets, he's done really nicely on the road as far as what he does. They haven't always won the games. He's got like 28 touchdowns and 3 interceptions on the road in the last whatever years while he's been here in Kansas City. Wow. That's pretty good. He takes care of the ball. He does a nice job with that, but they don't always win the games. So it's just hard to beat the Patriots. And the Patriots have had their schedule came out in April. It's a long time to get prepared for. But I did ask Bill Belichick on the conference call earlier this week, what are his fears about opening day? And he says it's the scariest game of the year because you just don't know what the other team's going to do either. Mm-hmm. They do so well at knowing their opponent. And there's that little bit of mystery that Andy Reid may bring to them that kind of switches up what they do. These teams played a really good playoff game 2 years ago in Foxborough. The Patriots won by 7. 3 years ago when these teams played in Arrowhead in the regular season, the Chiefs won by like 30 points. They had a really special night, a couple of picks, and Tom Brady got pulled in the game and all that. I don't think that's going to happen tonight. This will be tough up there. The one good thing for the Chiefs is that Julian Edelman's out, and they haven't really got to play a game without him yet. So, but I do think Brandon Cooks is probably going to have a big year. I mean, he's probably as maybe talented a wide receiver as Brady's had up there since Randy Moss, maybe. So maybe some big numbers will come up with him. I don't know. It's going to be a tough task for the Chiefs.
You anticipating big numbers for the rookie Kareem Hunt after Spencer Ware went down here in Seattle a couple weeks ago?
Well, they've loved him since they drafted him, and I like everything you hear and see about him when he talks to you, the studying he's done. He did not really wow me in the preseason, but they made no hesitation when Spencer Ware got hurt. They didn't even think about Charkandrick West, and they ended up cutting C.J. Spiller and bringing him back. So this is the guy they've loved, and so I'm excited to see him play. Well, you're going to talk about a big stage coming from a MAC school. All right, here you go. Your first NFL game is going to be on NBC Thursday night, in front of a packed house. That won't be like going to play Western Michigan or anything like that.
Thanks, Todd. Enjoy the game tonight.
Sure thing.
You bet. Todd Lebo from Kansas City, WHB, and that is the Daily Schnoz.
Well, that's the news. I'm out of here.
The Daily Schnoz, brought to you by Michael's Toyota of Bellevue on Sports Radio 950 KJR.
Big last couple hours and change here. We've got the first 12th man roundtable of the 2017 Seahawks season. That's coming up at the top of the hour. Jason Lock and 4 at 9 o'clock. This is the day we get all of Jason Lock and 4's picks. Who's going to win the NFC West? Who's going to be in the NFC Championship game? Who's going to be in the Super Bowl? How far does he have the Seahawks going? We'll find out from Jason Lock and 4. Don't forget fact or fiction. I still haven't decided if I'm doing today or if you're doing today, Slickhawk. You gotta.
So you need me to get one ready just in case?
Well, I've got a couple.
Yeah.
You want me to just do one today and you get one ready for Friday? Does that sound good?
We could do that.
All right, we'll do that. I'll give you a little lead time. So you do tomorrow.
All right.
I'll do today for our fact or fiction. Your opportunity, thanks to the Emerald Queen Casino, for win $1,000 every single week and a $10,000 grand prize at the end of the season. All you got to do is text in 49451 right after you hear me give you my pick du jour. My pick of... What's the pick du jour? Well, that's the pick of the day.
That's
the pick of the day. when you hear
Sounds good.
I'll take one. I'll have that.
I'll have that. With crackers.
That's right. So when you hear me do that at 8:30, you can text in fact or fiction to 49451. Back with more Hugh Breedlove Millen next on 950 KJR. Are you ready for the 12-man roundtable?
I have been ready for the 12-man roundtable for about 6 months.
For a long, long time. Well, it's coming.
The 12-man roundtable means that there's Seahawks football just like 3 days away.
You only have to wait 10 more clicks of the clock, and then we will have Hugh Breedlove Millen, Greg Bell, and a newcomer to the 12-man roundtable, our own Curtis Crabtree, who covers
just walked in behind me.
What?
Yeah.
He's early. How about that? He must be fired up. He's got a Titleist hat on again.
It looks like he just came off the golf
course. He
course.
always looks like he just came off the golf course.
It's either the Target Open
every time
or
I
the
see him, it looks
Coca-Cola
like
Open. Oh, no, I'm just saying. You got a Target bag and you got some Coca-Cola Diet Coke. So it's either the Coca-Cola Open or the Target Classic.
He's ready to go. We're going to talk about our beloved Seattle Seahawks. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about here for about 5 minutes. We love our Hawks, but we also realize that they're not perfect. We also realize that not everybody likes our Seattle Seahawks around the country.
Now, wait a minute.
In fact, I would go so far as to say if you polled America, and I'm sure this has been done somewhere.
Probably.
If you polled America and just had a poll of everybody in the country and list me your most hated teams from 1 to 32, the Seattle Seahawks would be a heck of a lot closer to the top of that list than they would be to the bottom of that list, which just means, one, we've been good and people don't like teams that are perpetually good. We know that. Two, there are some unlikable things about the Seattle Seahawks. And so I give you, Slickhawk, from our friends at Deadspin, why your team sucks 2017 Seattle Seahawks.
Oh, they did this for every team, right?
They did this for every team.
Okay. I want to hear why the Seahawks suck in 2017. Let's
It starts, this is Drew McGarry writing this for Deadspin.
Drew McGarry. Send him your hate mail.
This article got 168,000 likes. So there's a lot of people out there that agree with Drew McGarry. Some people are fans of the Seattle Seahawks, but many, many more people are not fans of the Seattle Seahawks. Your coach, serial gum torturer Pete Carroll, who nearly cost the team a draft pick because he violated off-season practice rules, all in the name of competition. Damn, if I have to hear one more story about how the Seahawks want everyone in practice to compete, I'll fly an airplane directly into Pete's head.
Hashtag always compete.
Maybe if your practices weren't so competitive, you wouldn't have players flipping off coaches and other players attempting Mortal Kombat fatalities on their own teammates.
Probably also wouldn't be going to Super Bowls, but hey, who am I to say?
And they still keep throwing on the bleeping goal line. Your quarterback. And then they show a picture of the infamous Russell Ciara baby naked picture. It just says, he's somewhere in there. Fun fact. I was watching TV with my kids this summer. and the Kids' Choice Sports Awards were on Nickelodeon.
Which is hosted by
Russell Wilson.
Yes! Like third year in a row.
And let me tell you, people, something. I have never seen Russell Wilson happier than he was hosting that show. He was radiating, ebullient, aglow. He was happier hosting that show than he was filming a post-coital Vine with his old lady. Stick Russell in the middle of the corniest, lamiest, most generic, most brandified event ever, and he is in ecstasy. He is the second coming of Ahmad Rashad down to the last cell.
Oh, wow.
Russell Wilson makes my flesh crawl, and I'm not alone. Ask his teammates.
Ahmad Rashad. Is he a Hall of Famer, by the way?
I think he
believe
is,
he is.
actually.
Go Ducks.
You could strand me on a desert island and give me only this Seth Wickersham article to read about the Seahawks despising Russell Wilson, and I would be a contented man until death. As for actual football, Wilson will be running for his life behind what will again be the worst line in football, and half his teammates probably will be cheering for him to break his clavicle. Left tackle George Fant already had his knee explode. By mid-season, Wilson's going to trot out there wearing a full exoskeleton body brace. To fortify this line, the Seahawks signed draft bust Luke Jokel and then traded a fifth-rounder for this dude. And they show a Vine of Matt Tobin where he laid a big hit on his own teammate. When he's playing for
Was that right before the butt fumble?
When he's playing for the Philadelphia Eagles, he lays a monster hit on his own teammate.
That's funny.
What's new that sucks? Well, one of the most beloved players in franchise history decided to unretire and enjoy the Raiders, who only had to swap low-end picks with Seattle to get them to agree to let him walk to their former division rival. Meanwhile, Eddie Lacy's here, and he has to weigh in more often than a child at fat camp. The team also signed Blair Walsh to replace Stephen Hauschka, which is like trading cholera for dysentery. I know you cocky Seattle fans think your team has magically cured Blair's yips just because he had a decent preseason. That's going to make it all sweeter when he bleeps you good. Wow. And he will bleep you good. Wow. You hear me? He better. So help me God, he better. Every bit as erratic as he was in Minnesota, or I will eat broken glass.
This guy must be up in the Great White North.
Yes. What has always sucked, the team is broken down and bleepy. You can already see the window of opportunity sealing shut. Beast mode's playing elsewhere. Wilson will be permanently damaged forever behind that line. Earl Thomas broke his leg and nearly retired, and Richard Sherman was a breath away from getting traded. Hell, both sides were acting like this is an inevitable, conscious uncoupling before the Seahawks had to suck it up and keep him. And there's nothing to indicate that the enmity between Sherman and Wilson has subsided, mostly because Sherman is a moody bleep. And anyone buying his whole iron-sharpened iron garbage? Of course not. Sherman is much of an attention whore as the quarterback he despises. Maybe they'll clutch and grab their way to another division title, but the little run of theirs will end soon enough, and thank God for that. When the Legion of Boom is dissolved and Wilson retires to host NBA Inside Stuff 2, Inside Stuffier, all the
Inside Stuffier,
all the casual fans will bleep off back to their app development job, and that guy right there who will be left at the clink getting smashed and acting like a deranged bleep. Your future is your past, Seattle. Now give Cassius Marsh his magic cards back.
Russell Wilson and Kristen Ledlow.
Sometimes you
featured
just
on Inside Stuffier.
Sometimes you just gotta laugh at yourself, don't you? Because
It's
there's a lot of truth in what that guy had to say. But we love the Seahawks, and the 12th man roundtable is next. Here we are, rolling into the 8 o'clock hour, which means 12th man roundtable is right around the corner. Let's get you caught up first with the sports headlines. Mariners lose, swept by the Astros. We got our hopes up. At least some of us got our hopes up after the sweep of the A's, and then just right back down the turlet this week at Safeco Field against Houston. One guy showed up for the Mariners on offense. That was Kyle Seager. No one else showed up. Reds have lost Billy Hamilton to a fractured thumb. NFL releasing a statement in response to Tom Brady, his wife Giselle, claiming that he had concussions. The league states there are no records of Brady suffering head injury or concussion or reported any signs or symptoms of one. Number 1 overall pick, Myles Garrett, got a high ankle sprain. He could miss the opener and possibly a couple of games. Former Notre Dame linebacker suing the university for allegedly concealing results from an MRI and instructing him to keep playing while he was risking a spinal cord injury. 16th-ranked Miami's canceled their home game against Arkansas State due to the impending hurricanes. Storm knocked out of the playoffs in Phoenix last night, and for the first time since 1981, all 4 semifinalists in the U.S. Open on the women's side are Americans. Let's do this.
We're ready. We're ready to go, and they're fired up about this opportunity. We know it's a one-season shot. Here we go.
Coming to you live from the Elliott Avenue Studios, this is the 12th Man Roundtable, brought to you by the Lucky Eagle Casino and Hotel, where you belong.
We know how to play. We know how to win. And ultimately, we believe in one another.
Touchdown, Seahawks! The 12th Man Roundtable with Greg Bell from the Tacoma News Tribune, KJR beat reporter Curtis Crabtree, and KJR analyst Hugh Millen on your home for the 12th man in the NFL. Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
Well, Slickhawk, I think we just sucked Crabtree into a weekly appearance here with that open.
I don't know, maybe.
We just sucked him in, man. He made the open, which means he can't leave us.
I'm sure he'll
We've
be thrilled
trapped
about
him.
that. 8 o'clock every Thursday morning.
Oh, really? That's what that means. We'll see about that one.
I think Curtis, that's just kind of how things happen here.
We just make unilateral decisions, and there you have it.
Speak it into existence.
We thank the Lucky Eagle Casino and Hotel in Rochester. Hawks fans, get ready to show your Hawks pride with Lucky Eagle Casino and Hotel's $64,000 fantasy football kiosk game now through December 30th. Pick the pros, score the cash. Visit LuckyEagle.com for more details. Well, welcome, gentlemen. It's really a shame that we cover a football team that never has anything interesting to talk about. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, there is never a dull moment with this team, and now we have to touch, before we can really get into the nuts and bolts of Sunday, we got to touch on the nuts and bolts of yesterday, and I didn't really bring it up with Greg much in the 7 o'clock segment, so we'll do it now. And Greg, I'll start with you. Your response to everything that went down yesterday, particularly from the Seahawks side, and how strong they came out in support of Michael Bennett. Was that at all a surprise that they came out that strong without us hearing from the police?
Not in the Pete Carroll regime, no. And that's what he's fostered since he's been here in January 2010, is he's players first, players always. I'm always going to back the players. Mm-hmm. And he was unequivocal, Carroll was, on his support for Michael Bennett. And he's encouraged this. His social platforms and players speaking about issues, politics. This is nothing new in that regard. Now, this is a bigger deal, obviously, and very traumatic, and Michael Bennett still seemed affected by it as of yesterday. His brother Martellus told the Green Bay media how shaken he was, and Cliff Baverill said he's never seen Michael Bennett more shaken. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, this is a window into our society, and it's not one that fans want to think about and talk about because they're worried about football and who's making first downs and touchdowns. These guys are people too, and they are citizens of our country that has a race issue problem that I don't think anyone can deny. And when you're, as Cliff Averill talked about, when you are out on the street of any city other than Seattle, people don't recognize Michael Bennett. Right. Or they see him as another 6'4", 30-year-old black male in America. And if he's fleeing a casino in a active shooter situation, he is just like anybody else in the society until, in this case, the police had him face down at gunpoint on the sidewalk to finally figure out who it was. Bennett told me that the only reason he finally got released was that one of the other police officers who came up said, "Wait, that looks like Michael Bennett, the Seahawks guy." And then one of the other officers there detaining him looked him up on his mobile device and found his internet picture and said, "Oh, okay, you are Michael Bennett." And then they talked their way out of it.
I don't think it's a surprise at all that they rallied around him like they did. That is quintessential Pete Carroll 101 in the way that they want to have their locker room together. And I think you've seen that throughout the years in various different situations, health situations, player situations, all of the above. They are very tight when it comes to that. And they talk, you think back at all the times Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor have talked about the brotherhood that they have and those sort of things. So when a key member of that unit who's been around since 2013 has something like this happen to him, they're absolutely going to be right there with it and have his back in everything moving forward with it. And you can tell the status that he has on the team that, last year when Jeremy Lane sat for the anthem, the team rallied together and made sure they did something together, this unity thing that they did all last season, locking arms and that sort of thing. When Bennett decided he was going to sit this year, there was no. They talked about it for sure, but there was no. There was this massive support for him and what he was going to do. Some people may have disagreed with it within the team, but they were fully cool with Michael Bennett having his platform and using it, and there wasn't this massive rallying around it to figure out, okay, what are we going to do about this as a team together? They allowed him to do his thing, and ultimately, with this situation coming up, you could tell that. They're going to support him. Seeing Martellus talk about it last night from some of the clips from Green Bay was pretty, emotionally racking
right.
too. He was sitting there, crying as he's talking to reporters for 20 minutes or so about his brother. So, pretty affecting all the way around.
Well, there's no question it was a terrifying event, and on a human level, I really, really feel for Michael Bennett and the compassion, of course, goes out from all of us to him and his family. For me, obviously the question is, was the incident, was there a racial component to the incident? And my own feeling is that we, of course, have to unite in the condemnation of racial misconduct by police officers or all social injustices. When I look at this, I say, okay, how do we identify? We're talking about people's intent. Is there racial motivation? A gas leak smells a lot like rotten eggs, so you have to kind of decipher. Police misconduct looks and smells a lot like racially motivated police misconduct, but it isn't necessarily so. So in this situation, I don't know for certain that had Cassius Marsh been the guy in the exact same circumstance, I don't know that he wouldn't have been singled out as suspicious activity. The Las Vegas police said it was his suspicious activities and other facts. We don't know the other facts. Michael Bennett was asked, well, what'd you do before the video? He says, I can't get into that. I understand that. So there's still some questions unanswered. I'm certainly prepared to say that could well have been a racially motivated incident. But I don't find overt proof to that. And I think that in Renton, they're leaping to that conclusion. I understand why Pete Carroll, it's very prudent for him to support Michael Bennett. Right. He absolutely should. I understand the teammates, it's very prudent for them to support their teammates. They absolutely should. But for me, in the court of public opinion, yeah, as I said, I'm prepared to unite in the condemnation. I don't. I'm just not certain that couldn't have happened to Cassius Marsh.
Yeah, I really quickly.
Yeah,
I think it's tough to figure out whether any one specific incident was racially motivated. Certain times you can. As far as our society goes, I think in the aggregate, with how many issues that have happened over the last couple of years, I think you can point and say, yes, there's a problem with this on the large scale.
Yeah.
To specific incidents, it's tough to figure out which one's which.
And Greg, that's a question. I want to get to that part because I totally understand Pete Carroll supporting his player. My question is, when he says things like inequalities brought to light, is he talking about the greater problem we have, or is he specifically accusing the Las Vegas Police Department of racial profiling in this particular incident? Because if he's doing that could be a little bit dangerous if we don't have all the facts.
Right, and he's smarter than to point out the Las Vegas Police Department by name. So he wasn't speaking specifically to that incident. He thinks this is emblematic of a societal problem that Richard Sherman mentioned yesterday. I won't say, I'd be overstating to say a majority, but a large number of players in the Seahawks locker room have had something similar happen to them because they are black males in America. And Hugh is right. There are many questions here. what prompted the police to single out Bennett. The video showing that the police showed during the press conference was very inconclusive.
Absolutely.
It didn't show the actual event that would cause Bennett to be singled out under what I saw, dozens of people running or ducking or hiding behind gaming machines and all the other things that were going on in that room. But I also want to publicly state I have a tremendous amount of respect for law enforcement officers, and I have friends that are in it. I'm a military veteran. I understand if you have guns drawn in an active shooter situation, what you think is an active shooter situation, it's easy for us to sit behind a microphone or a computer and dissect frame by frame what police did or didn't do, what they said or didn't say. Those officers believed their lives and other lives were in danger, and they were taking actions to prevent a mass casualty. For us to then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later dissect that from Seattle is a little bit sanctimonious, and I think that's something that we should try to stay away from as a public and let these men and women of the law enforcement do their jobs. That does not mean that there is not a problem in this society. That does not mean that what Michael Bennett stands for and sits for during national anthems is not real.
Greg Bell, Curtis Crabtree, Hugh Millen, it's the 12th man roundtable. How does this affect the team, if at all? You've talked about how affected Michael Bennett appears. We do have a very big football game, bigger than most. I know it's just 1 out of 16, but when you think of the long-term implications of a potential win over Green Bay or a loss to Green Bay, that could have very big tiebreaker implications when it comes to the end of the season and conference implications. How does this affect the team? Positively, negatively, not at all. Curtis?
I think it could have some lingering hangover. Michael is going to see his brother 90 minutes before kickoff for the first time since this incident happened. I'm sure emotions are going to be running high for him, probably for some time. How that plays into what happens when the ball's kicked off, I have no way to say. There's no way to predict exactly how it's going to affect him specifically. But the team can certainly rally around him and try to. I mean, they're all going to go as hard as they can anyway, but maybe there's just an ounce more of feel for it. It's tough to say, but I don't think it particularly negatively impacts them. Maybe there's a slight positive impact, unless negatively, I guess, would be if Bennett's mind's just in a different place for whatever reason. But I don't anticipate that being the case. We'll see how it goes, I guess.
But they did seem shaken, right, Greg? All of them.
They were. And if there's any team in NFL or professional sports equipped and experienced to handle something like this and then go play a game, it's this one.
That's right.
This team has gone through, they go after Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, each other, you name it. I mean, Michael Bennett was wearing Bernie Sanders gear to press conferences this time last year.
That's right.
They don't shy away from any of this, even on eves of games. I mean, the Seahawks met at this time last year for the opener for Miami. The Seahawks were meeting at this very day, right up to kickoff, on how they were going to show a sign of unity in response to Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during national anthems. They talked to it the day of the game how they were going to do that. It was a divided locker room on, well, should we kneel? Should we sit? Should we go on? They ended up arm in arm for the whole entire season. But that was on a game day of a regular season opener last year. So they're not – they can seem to compartmentalize their societal platforms they want to speak from and their football responsibilities.
And there was a brawl involving Percy Harvin on the eve of the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Your point is taken. I think and I was part of a Cowboy team that won a Super Bowl, and they had some combustible personalities and a lot of attention coming their way. And I think thoroughbreds, both individually, collectively, oftentimes they're able to, these guys are world-class professional athletes that are used to thrusting themselves into the limelight or being thrust into it in other areas, and they're able to focus on Sunday. I really don't think it's going to be a problem. But I agree ultimately with Curtis. We don't know how it may impact Bennett. The inclination, I think, time is a factor. We're not talking about today's Thursday. We're not talking about today being Saturday night or Sunday. I think by the time Sunday rolls around, they'll have had enough time to process it and move forward.
And move forward we must. to a very large football game. How big is this game? I mean, when you think opener, you always kind of put a bigger price tag on it than you do maybe week 7 of the season, and then you add to it 2 heavyweights going at it. The 2 favorites in the NFC, at least according to Vegas, going at it. Is this kind of a game that could potentially shape at least the beginning part of the season, you guys?
Well, it will, and regardless, if they lose this game, there's going to be a lot of jumping off bridges in some regards, saying, they just lost their tiebreaker to the Packers later on. They lost the first game. They look like crap in overreaction city because that's the only game you have to go on so far. But it is a significant game. This is one of the teams you're probably going to be racing for playoff seeding when all's said and done. They have not won a game at Lambeau Field since Mike Holmgren's first year as a head coach with this franchise.
Yep.
The last 3 times that they've played the Packers, Russell Wilson's been intercepted 10 times in total. So this is a kind of a bugaboo team for him.
And they actually won one of those games.
Somehow they did.
When he was picked off 5 times.
The most important one, somehow, some way. But yeah, so going back to Lambeau Field and getting a win there is not the likeliest scenario in the world. Does that ruin their season? No, of course not. Mm-hmm. You have 15 more games to put yourself in better position, get more wins than them on the aggregate, and the tiebreaker wouldn't even matter at the end of the day. But certainly, it's a good measuring stick right out of the gate against potentially the other team at the top of the NFC to see where you're at. Mm-hmm. And if you can go in there and steal one, you've got a massive chip you can hold on to for the rest of the year.
And Greg, because it's a road game, you actually gain more by winning than you lose by losing.
Right, and This is going to be the only game of the first 6 the Seahawks are likely going to be an underdog for. Mm-hmm. The schedule is much more forgiving this season, especially early, than it's been in previous years, especially for a playoff team. And that's the virtue of the Seahawks winning only 10 games last year. They didn't get the 12-win schedule that they've got in the previous years. So even if they lose, and Curtis is right, fans are going to be, wow, they did this, they couldn't win that, we don't have this. There's a very strong, there is a good likelihood the Seahawks are going to be 5-1 in the middle of October. And if they are on that path in an NFC West that has really only one true competitor with Los Angeles and San Francisco completely rebuilding with new regimes and new quarterbacks, that should put them instead for not only the division crown but a second-round playoff game at home. Then you come into, if the Seahawks and Packers do end up tied, it would be this game that would determine whether that NFC title game was in Lambeau or CenturyLink Field, and that's way ahead of ourselves. But it's a long way of saying that the Seahawks have a lot of business they can take care of beyond Lambeau Field on Sunday. And I think it's a benefit to them to play the opener in Green Bay. They were going to have to play in Green Bay sometime this season.
Right.
Whether the fact that they have 15 games to right or wrong, whatever happens after this game, it's a benefit for them to play the opener in Green Bay and then move on with the rest of their relatively easy schedule.
And Hugh, the bottom line is always going to be whether you win or lose. And I know we're going to be sitting here on Monday. If they win, we're going to be understating the potential struggles of the offensive line. And if they lose, we're going to be magnifying the struggles of the offensive line, even if the difference between winning and losing is maybe one play that has nothing to do with the offensive line.
There's only been one team that's gone 16-0 in the regular season. Of course, one team also went 14-0. And so it's unlikely that Seattle's going to go undefeated. So if you look at this, you'd say this would be a prime game that you would expect to lose. So I don't think that if they were to lose, that let's take a look at how it looks. But I don't think it cripples them. As the panel's pointing out, they're probably underdogs here. But we just go from it. I don't put a lot of stock in the NFL in Game 1. I think this is a mature football team. And
where can the Seahawks attack the Packers? Where do they have the advantage? We'll talk about the next segment. And what frightens you to no end about the Seahawks going into Lambeau Field? Where is that matchup that you're really scared about? We'll address that with Greg Bell, Curtis Crabtree, and Hugh Millen. It's the 12th Man Roundtable, and it rolls on here on 950 KJR. Back to the 12th Man Roundtable in just a moment, but we have to take this time at 8:30 to make a pick. Sports Radio KJR brings you Fact or Fiction, presented by our friends at the Emerald Queen Casino. For 13 weeks, we will be giving you a pick. 8:30 a.m. on the morning show, 3:30 p.m. on Softy's show. All you got to do is once you hear the pick, you text 49451 the word fact if you agree with the pick, or the word fiction if you disagree with the pick.
God, that seems simple.
It's very, very easy. We want to keep things nice and easy. We're simple-minded people here, Slickhawk.
Yeah.
So we need to keep it simple for
It needs to
everyone
be
else.
something easy enough that I can understand it and explain it.
How do you win? Well, very simple. Anyone who texts in a correct answer at any point during the week is entered to win the $1,000 weekly prize. But the more times you win over the course of the week, obviously, it's like a lottery. The more lottery tickets you got, the better chance you have to win.
Especially if they have the same numbers.
Stop it. Don't get Hugh on you again. And the person with the most correct guesses at the end of the contest will win the grand prize. So that's not a random draw. The grand prize is not a random draw. The grand prize is simply the person who played and won the most.
So basically we're giving away what?
A something butt ton of money.
A
cubic butt ton.
ton
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
of the EQC's
That's
money.
exactly right. So we need a pick for today, don't you? Well,
we do.
I will be giving you my pick. I'll be giving my final score along with Curtis and Greg here in about 20 minutes for the Seahawks game. But I'm going to go in the Seahawks game for this pick.
Oh, see, I was going to stay away from this.
And I'm going to go the defenses get it done over the offenses on Sunday afternoon. I think that is a very high number of 50.5. I like the score in the low to mid-20s for both sides.
See, I think it's a shootout.
I'm going to take the under on the Hawks-Packers game, under 50.5 for my official fact or fiction. Text right now, 49451. Text in fact if you think I'm dead on. Text fiction if you think I'm nuts. And that is how you play fact or fiction.
Now back to our Elliott Avenue studios for the 12th Man Roundtable, powered by the Lucky Eagle Casino and Hotel, where you belong, on Seattle Sports Radio 950, KJR.
Advantages, disadvantages. When you've got a heavyweight battle like this, sometimes it's difficult to point out where one side has got a significant edge. I'm not sure this is one of those cases. So, Hugh, let's start with you. I'm sure you've chewed through this matchup. The advantages and disadvantages. Let's start with the ways that you think the Seahawks have a clear advantage over the Packers and a win could be because of those advantages.
Well, I think you just start with the defense. Right now, I'm dying to see Sheldon Richardson in there, and now with 8 Pro Bowlers, as potent as Green Bay's offense is, offenses oftentimes kind of take a while to gel, and I think we've seen that from Aaron Rodgers through the years. We've seen it from a lot of greats through the years, and so I agree with you on the under on this. I think that any talk about Richard Sherman last year having a bad year, I think is nonsense. Now, you do have Shaq Griffin. There is going to be a guy that's going to get picked on, but I think the rest of everybody, I think they're healthy. Getting Earl Thomas back, Cam Chancellor healthy. I think just the energy within that defense. I think they're gonna play Green Bay's offense well. Obviously the disadvantage is always going to be the offensive line until proven otherwise.
Aaron Rodgers against Shaq Griffin is the biggest advantage for Green Bay. He'll go out, as I mentioned, at 7 o'clock. If they throw 35 times, 25 times might be in the direction of Shaq Griffin. And Aaron Rodgers has shown he will go away from Richard Sherman.
Yep, all day long.
And he will dare the Seahawks to shadow Jordy Nelson with Richard Sherman.
Will they?
I don't think they will. And I don't. It just doesn't strike me yet that the Seahawks want to see that. They want to see what their defense looks like, the way they want to play it, which is Sherman on one side, Griffin in the other, and Lane in the nickel. That means the Seahawks need a pass rush, which is part of the reason Sheldon Richardson's here, why you're going to pay him $8 million for a rental, is to see how that works. And it's going to be Richardson inside with Bennett on third downs. And then you see, does Jari Evans have anything left at right guard? He's now the new starting right guard. TJ Lang left for Detroit for the big bucks, as we don't need to remember how that happened.
You mean the guy that wasn't good enough to play on our line last year, but was good enough to start for the Saints all last year?
That's right.
That guy?
I mean, the John Schneider.
I still can't figure how that plays out when you're not good enough to play for the worst offensive line in football, but you are good enough to start for an okay offensive line in football.
Well, to John Schneider's credit, Jari Evans looked like he was 81 years old.
Yeah, he didn't look good in training camp.
And then he played.
So he got younger?
No, he just got. He was kind of out of shape, didn't look great, and grew into it.
Pardon my snark, but jeez.
Well, he went to a Saints offensive line that wasn't exactly stellar either. This game, for defensively, they got to get a pass rush to offset what's going to be a pick-on fest again. And Griffin may be great, but if you're going to throw at him 25 times, he's probably not going to stop 25 of 24 or 22 of them.
No, let's hope he stops 15.
On the other side, Hugh's right. The offensive line for every game is going to be the issue. The Packers have Clay Matthews and Nick Perry back from injuries that they were banged up during the preseason. They're practicing. They signed Ahmad Brooks to run from the outside. He's used to rushing Russell Wilson from out there. They're going to send everybody back to Newt Rockne at the outside flanks of the Seahawks, tackles, and Reese Odhiambo in particular, and Jermaine Ifedi, who hasn't looked fast on the right tackle either. Every opponent for the Seahawks is going to send everybody at their flanks, as they've done for the last couple of years. That remains the Seahawks' biggest weakness.
Hugh, what is it? You call him a pigeon?
Well, I think quarterbacks are looking for pigeons.
Aaron Rodgers is going to see if Shaq Griffin's a pigeon.
He's going to see if he is.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I think Russell Wilson's probably going to try to see if Kevin King's a pigeon over there for the Packers, rookie who's going to be getting his first start too, and I know struggled at times throughout training camp for Green Bay. So that is certainly going to be one area where the Packers are going to go after Seattle without question.
Well, no
There's
question.
Shaq right there.
I think a point in my mind that I think bears mentioning just schematically. You know, we talked a few weeks ago how there's obviously a synergy with run defense and pass defense, and when the Seahawks are playing their way, you know, I think that sometimes it's easy to kind of forget how vital it is for them to stop the run. And you know, Carroll, you go back to some of his earlier press conferences. He's not alone in this mantra, in this philosophy. It's you know, they have to stop the run on neutral downs, first down and 10, and second and neutral,
which they have done against Green Bay last few
that's
years.
Been so. Watch the type of third downs that Seattle's getting into. If in fact Shaq Griffin is being targeted as the pigeon, if you look at schematically, Seattle is much more likely to go into cover 2, roll the coverage in longer yardage situations. That's not their bread and butter coverage, but they've been, with Chris Richard, more willing to play it than previous defensive coordinators. So one of the plans to help Shaq Griffin would be keep those longer yardage the third downs rather, longer yardage, so they can have the type of coverages where they roll to help Shaq Griffin, as opposed to the 3rd and 3 to 6. You know, they're going to be more likely to be in one-on-one type of situations, whether it's man or whether it's zone. That's when Shaq Griffin gets into one-on-one. And you say, well, one-on-one in zone? Yeah, one-on-one in zone. You know, most every route in some of their zone, their base zone defense is in essence for the corner, it's man-to-man unless he's running a shallow cross. So let's see if they can stop the run to get into those longer yardage situations.
We'll ask the experts here how comfortable they are with the 5-man wide receiver core that Russell Wilson's going to be throwing to this year, particularly against those secondary members of the Green Bay Packers on Sunday. Sheldon Richardson's impact, and we got to get our picks all in the final segment of the 12th Man Roundtable right after this on 950 KJR. 8:47, 12th Man Roundtable concluding here this segment. There's Shaq the Pigeon. Let's hope he comes through for the Hawks on Sunday afternoon. We'll do our picks in about 7 or 8 minutes, but right now, let's go into some of the more concerns that we have about this team. We talked about Shaq Griffin. The offensive line, guys, I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 years now or more. Simple question for you. Is Odhiambo, Jokel, Britt, Glowinski, and Ifedi, is that the best offensive line, in your opinion, this team can throw out? Or is it simply what they're hoping works so they don't have to move Luke Jokel, the left tackle. Hugh, what do you think?
I think it's what they think is the best now. For me, I think Glowinski and Ode Abushi would likely be better guards than Luke Jokel. But that's just based on what I saw in preseason, and I'm probably overly influenced by the knowledge of Luke Jokel's knee. I think a guy that played suspect a year ago, and then you have an ACL, MCL, and a meniscus tear, a major surgery. You know, he played 34 snaps and then had to take the day off. He had numerous times where he had to take the day off because the knee just couldn't handle the load. He's going and he's doing that unorthodox medicine, to try and, platelet spin, what? Regeneron, yeah.
The Regeneron 5.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical about him. I feel really good about the center based on 1 year. I feel pretty good about right guard. I think Glowinski kind of came on. I thought the last couple of weeks, or particularly week 3, I thought he looked. I think he grabbed the job in week 3, and yet I got the concern about the tackles. Particularly on the right side.
This is Reese Odiambo's first career start at left tackle.
Yeah, we had that last year with Fant, so
exactly.
Here we go again.
Going against Nick Perry.
I think that Ethan Posick is going to factor in the season at some point in the starting lineup, whether by injury or by performance or by lack of performance by those currently starting. I'm with you in that this is the best 5 they have at the moment, hoping it'll work. They are extremely, at least speaking to us, they are extremely averse to moving Luke Jokel to left tackle. I mean, almost to the point that if they might put Matt Tobin in, who they just got a week and a half ago from Philadelphia, at left tackle before Jokel if Odiambo doesn't work out. I just think Ethan Posick, they drafted him in the second round, and we've gone through this. It's because he can play center guard and tackle. But I think that they are going to try him into a starting role at some point in the regular season. And we'd be naive to think that the 5 that are starting in Green Bay are going to be the 5 throughout the season. That never happens.
Course.
It's going to be 7, 8 deep by the end of it.
Well, I don't know if Posick ends up in the starting lineup if not for injury purpose, because when I watch him, I think he lacks some strength right now. Personally, I think that can be something developed over a year's time and so forth before he would potentially become a starter next year. But there's a decent chance he could get forced into the role one way or the other. But I think he's a capable backup option. If they need him coming off the bench, I think that makes sense for now. I do agree. I think Matt Tobin would be the next person up at left tackle. This is the 5 guys that I think they feel most comfortable about. I think they could easily swap out their right guards and not lose a ton between Glowinski and Ode Abushi. Jokel, they obviously want to keep it left guard, centers set. But those tackles are going to be something to watch. Unlike George Fant a year ago, you've got a guy in Reese Odiambo who's actually played left tackle for a significant amount of time. Whether he can handle it at the NFL level, we don't know yet. And Jermaine Ifedi, in the run game, he can look pretty good at times, unless he has to move a lot of distance. It's the pass pro where it's going to be the biggest thing.
I agree.
All of these guys are better run blockers than they are pass protectors.
Well, which is exactly what Pete Carroll would love to do. Hammer the ball, hammer the ball, hammer the ball. And but you still need wide receivers to produce. And you take a look at this wide receiver core, guys, now without Jermaine Kearse, whether you love him or you don't love him, he's not on the team. Without Cason Williams, who was the best-looking wide receiver in camp. And you're going with Doug Baldwin, who has proven to be a top 10, top 12 wide receiver, but not your typical big number 1 guy. And then Lockett with injury concerns, Richardson with injury concerns, Tanner McAvoy with experience concerns, and Amara Darboh, who has looked no better than Curtis Crabtree out there in practice. No offense, Curtis. How concerned are we with that receiver core, guys?
I'm concerned with the receiver core for all the reasons you just articulated. Absolutely. Now, Jimmy Graham, I think, deserves to be mentioned as part of, I think, in Russell Wilson's and in Darrell Bevel's way of thinking. He's a target, and so I think that he's going to draw coverage. In zone coverage, they're going to squeeze to him, which opens wider windows for other guys. But Richardson is not a classic split end at his size and what have you. He's not shown himself to be a complete receiver. He's, he doesn't have the repertoire of the route tree where you say, look, he's solid on all areas. He's got a handful of routes that you like him in. There's a handful that you absolutely do not like him in whatsoever. Lockett, both physically and mentally, coming back from such a horrific injury is a concern. I think that the club has been intrigued with Tanner McAvoy. Russell Wilson's, albeit on 11 pass attempt, but his pass rating when throwing to McAvoy was 121. Hell, he had more first down catches than Jermaine Kearse, for almost the entire season there, despite playing 1/10 of the time. So I think that they feel like give him some more time and he can blossom into a role that really helps the club.
They love McAvoy's 6'6" outside. They really do.
They don't have a guy like that outside of him with that size.
And by the way, to underscore the athleticism, this guy played quarterback, safety at Wisconsin. I think he was, one of these high school all-everything track basketball. I mean, he's really like a top-flight athlete, Now, can he be an elite receiver? We'll see. Elite's a strong word, but you understand.
Can he even be this productive receiver?
Well, he's a guy that can make. He caught a pass on the drive that Austin Davis won the job. I mean, he caught a ball off of his shoe tops, just went down and plucked it. I mean, he has some abilities, and he's the kind of guys you say, okay, for those who are questioning the role, the decisions with Jermaine Kearse, right, wrong, or indifferent. Moving Jermaine Kearse allows for an opportunity like a guy like Tanner McAvoy at the end of the year to say, wow, maybe he wasn't their leading guy. He's not going to be their leading guy, but he really had a substantial contribution.
Oh, we got to get the picks. Greg got cut off.
Why does he give Greg his wide receiver? Give Greg his wide receiver comment.
My only comment was I think some of the reason they only kept 5 and let Case and Williams go is because they plan on, we'll see what they do, but they plan on using Jimmy Graham more. We've been hearing it for years.
Right.
Defenses know that too. But Jimmy Graham is going to be wide receiver-ish in the targets that he gets, or at least the game plan suggests that he should get.
And C.J. Prosise and J.D. McKissick can split out wide, too, in different packages.
Very versatile.
McKissick looks like a wide receiver to me, an NFL wide receiver. Yeah. Put number 85 on him, and in my mind, I see a wide receiver.
Yeah, I can see this.
We know what Hughes' prediction is. It's 2-0. So
73-0.
73-0. Yeah. Okay, 73-0.
Chicago.
That was
Bears,
you got it.
Go.
You pulled the reference.
There you go.
63.
Greg, your opportunity to go here, and let's just start off with your perfect season starts right now. Your perfect 16-0 prediction season starts right now. What's it going to be on Sunday?
Aaron Rodgers is going to be the guy who wins the game. Lambeau Field, Aaron Rodgers, and he will find a way to. He doesn't mind dinking and dunking. He doesn't mind going away from Richard Sherman. He has gotten very good at this point of his career of avoiding rushes, getting away just long enough, not taking off and running like he did early in his career, but just moving away from pressure. Ty Montgomery is a guy the Seahawks are going to have to contain. He's a better runner. They have a better running game than they've had the last few times going into Lambeau Field. I think the Packers win 24-20 because Aaron Rodgers is just a very good football player.
Yeah, ultimately I think that while Sheldon Richardson is a better piece than what they had a week ago, there is going to take some time for the chemistry to develop among those 4 guys up front, and it's probably not going to be hitting on all cylinders right out of the gate off of 4 practices that they have. So I think Rodgers will be able to find enough success to do what he needs to do. I'm going to think that Russell Wilson throws at least one costly pick for him because Dom Capers seems to give him trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packers probably are able to pull this thing out, something in the neighborhood of 23-17.
I'm with you guys, and I'm glad Game 1 is a gravy game. I call it a gravy game because if the Hawks win it, we are going to be feeling really good about this season on Monday. And if the Hawks lose it, provided one of 2 things don't happen. Provided it's not just a shellacking like we saw late last year when Earl Thomas wasn't on the field. And provided that no significant member of this team is injured for a long particular space of time in this game. As long as one of those 2 things doesn't happen, we're not going to be depressed on Monday if they lose. I don't see how either one of these offenses puts up 30 points against the other defense. I don't see how the Hawks can do it without wide receiver core and a questionable running game and a very questionable offensive line, how they can get to 30. I don't see, as great as Aaron Rodgers is, I don't see how this defense ever gives up 30 this season. But I do think this defense gives up more points in this game than they do in any other game all season long. I've got the exact same score as Greg. Packers 24, Seahawks 20. Gentlemen, thank you. We'll talk to you at 7 o'clock on Monday, Greg.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, man. Thanks, Curtis. Appreciate it. We'll be back with Jason La Canfora in the 9 o'clock hour coming up next on 950 KJR. Here we are rolling into the 9 o'clock hour on a Thursday, a football Thursday, because we have football tonight. We got Dave Softy Mahler at the 520 Bar and Grill this afternoon, so stop by and say hi to Softy. And while you're at it, belly up and watch the Chiefs and Patriots, and you can listen to it right here on 950 KJR at 5 o'clock as we kick off the NFL season. Headlines: Mariners lose. They're sliding away in the wild card race, 3.5 games out. They have a day off today, and then almost a must-sweep series. I'm not going to quite call it. It's a must-win series against the Angels. I would almost call it a must-sweep series, but it's at the very least a must-win series against the Angels coming up this weekend. Packers coach Mike McCarthy says right tackle Brian Bulaga will go through the early stages of practicing. He'll be evaluated to see if he can play this week. Greg Bell did mention that he practiced yesterday, so things are looking up for the Packers as far as their pivotal piece of that offensive line. A former Notre Dame linebacker is suing the university for allegedly concealing results from an MRI and instructing him to keep playing while he was risking a spinal cord injury, so a bad situation there in South Bend. 16th ranked Miami canceling their home game against Arkansas State due to the hurricane. Let's chat with our friend Jason, shall we?
It's time for our weekly conversation with CBSSports.com's NFL insider, Jason La Canfora. Presented by Zeke's Pizza, homegrown in the Northwest.
While our baseball team is sliding away, yours is still right there, aren't they, Jason? 3 games over.
Yeah, they're hanging in there.
You didn't have a lot of faith in them. When we talked to you a couple weeks ago, you were like, dude, this team is done.
The pitching is horrific. I mean, it literally is the worst starting pitching in the history of this franchise, and it's the worst in the majors except for Cincinnati.
And ours.
You know, and they can't win on the road, and they're about to play 10 straight on the road. Look, I root for them. I'm all in. I'd love to see it happen. But they're not beating anybody in a best-of-7 series with this pitching. It's just absolutely, positively impossible. So, I mean, it's a neat little ride. And, you know, the other night they had 4 home runs at Camden Yards because it's a little bandbox, and it was hot and humid, and that's what they do. But they ain't hitting 4 home runs in a game off Cleveland's staff in October, and outside of Bundy and Gossman, there's nobody who gives them a fighting chance on the mound. They're literally pulling guys in the second inning now. And they have to. It's a smart thing to do. I'm glad Buck's finally started doing it. But it's tragically bad.
Yeah, well, you sound like you're. I'm talking to a Mariner fan here. I mean, that's exactly what we're going through right here. But we'll see how it ends up over the next few weeks. But let's turn our focus to the NFL, which begins tonight. And once again, Jason, it seems like in this little northwest corner of the country, we seem to be the epicenter of NFL news an awful lot, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, more than our share, man. We seem to be the epicenter of NFL news, and once again we are with this crazy situation.
I feel bad saying that because a lot of it is. I mean, part of it is just people talking about things that make that team go and make them click. You know what I mean? Going back to what was it, ESPN.com, or you know what I mean? Whatever the expose was, that really just was a portal into what made them. You could frame that any way you want. To me, it was just more exhaustive reporting on things we already knew about the DNA of this team that was unique to them and was part of, to me, their charm. To a lot of people, probably their odor, right? Because you guys sense they're not the most popular team nationally.
Correct.
And then sometimes things happen that are just like horrific and scary, and it happens to involve a Seahawk player. Sometimes it's like Marshawn Lynch, where I don't give a damn whether he talked or not, but that's an easy story, an easy narrative for a lot of lazy journalists to latch onto and just keep milking for clicks. So, some of it is our culture, some of it is brought on by themselves, and some of it is just an unfortunate set of events, which, this incident with Michael Bennett, and I shudder to even use the term incident because, like, that connotes almost like two parties. And from everything I've read and heard and seen about this, I don't think he's guilty of anything other than, being African-American in the wrong place at the wrong time, which obviously is guilty of nothing and is emblematic of our societal ills and some things in this culture. But it's a scary video. It's a scary scene. It's not a Michael Bennett problem. It's not a Seattle Seahawks problem. It's an America problem.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think Michael Bennett is guilty of anything on that night. I completely agree with you. The only question I would have is Michael Bennett has done more than just assumed that he was racially profiled. He has basically convicted the Las Vegas Police Department of racially profiling him. Pete Carroll has stood behind that. He said, when he says inequalities brought to light, I question is he talking about this endemic problem we have nationally that when inequalities are brought to light, or is he talking about this particular incident? And then you have the Las Vegas Police Department come out with their side. And my simple question is this: do we know at this point that Michael Bennett was racially profiled?
I wasn't there. I've seen a snippet of the TMZ thing like everybody else, which obviously isn't, a 45-minute documentary-style account of every move that was made leading up to the video that we saw and then after the video that we saw. I'm going to personally, I don't want to say side with. I don't even want to say give the benefit of the doubt. Like, I have a feeling that Michael Bennett, the walk that he's walked on this planet long enough, and things he's dealt with and issues he's taken head on, and as educated as he is, and as immersed as he's been, not just since Colin Kaepernick did his thing, but for years in societal issues and social injustice and issues like racial profiling and issues like police brutality, I'm going to trust his instincts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't think he's not doing this for attention. This is the last kind of attention anybody wants. I mean, nobody wants a video of them like that out there.
Right, and he's clearly emotional and shaken about this. You're right. This is not a publicity stunt.
In his heart, do you think he really wants to? Like, they have enough things they're dealing with, but like anyone who would think that he has anything to gain in this, I don't see that side of it at all. So to me, as a man, again, who's walked that walk, if he overwhelmingly felt that way, I'm gonna trust his instincts.
Gotcha. I think
he's going out here to start.
Right.
You know what I mean? To start some campaign that's intrinsically about him. Everything he's done has been about other people, really. You know what I mean? It's about understanding Native Americans, about going to Haiti, or about going to Africa, or about enriching his worldview. But it's never been so much about him himself. I don't think that he has anything to gain here, and I don't think he would speak about this the way he would.
Right.
I don't think the Seahawks would speak about it the way they have. And that statement from the commissioner, I ain't never seen one like that from him before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I've never seen. And an issue like this, you usually just get, we're investigating the incident, you know what I mean, or we're aware of the situation. You don't usually get 2 paragraphs about the glowing character and inherent goodness of the person,
right,
involved. So I'm gonna trust Michael Bennett's thoughts and feelings and emotions after having lived through that.
And you're certainly not going to get that from Roger Goodell about Zeke Elliott or that situation. And let's transition to that. Is this simply going to be Tom Brady Part 2, that we're going to see a temporary restraining order and Zeke Elliott's going to play 16 games in 2017?
I don't know that this is that. This is an issue of alleged domestic violence where the league has a recently enacted standard that specifically says 6 games for a first offense. Tom Brady's was off-field, right? But a different matter, not involving anything criminal. It was off-field but related to the game of football as to whether or not he was getting an advantage, an unfair cheating advantage by doing this to the balls. The league had no specific policy on that in the collective bargaining agreement, but did have a game day manual, right? A game operations manual that went to all teams that set a $50,000 fine for over or underinflating footballs. And then he was handed a quarter of a season suspension. Mm-hmm. So I think legally, when you start talking about labor law and what's collectively bargained and what's not, and who has a stronger leg to stand on, I'm not a lawyer. I've talked to enough about this. I think Brady probably had more of a slam dunk case to at least get that injunction, you know what I mean, and be able to play while a judge figured out what exactly happened here. This judge is not going to adjudicate whether or not Ezekiel Elliott struck Tiffany Thompson or how many times or whatever. He's going to look at, well, is this policy being enforced the correct way? Mm-hmm. Does the league have the authority to issue this sort of fine? Is there a precedent for it? Is it subscribed? I'm not saying that Ezekiel Elliott won't get a restraining order, but it's a different sort of case, and I don't know that he has as much leverage as Brady had. I don't think he's got a chance in heck of winning this on appeal. But like Brady, Brady got a year out of it. I don't know that Elliott will. I mean, this judge may come out Friday and say, I've reviewed all the preliminary materials. We had one hearing, and I'm sorry. Do I think this was a bit of a kangaroo court? Maybe, but it's a collectively bargained kangaroo court.
Jason Lockenfor is brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. Zeke's Pizza with 13 great pizza locations in the Puget Sound, East Side, and Bothell. Order online at Zeke'sPizza.com. Jason, did the NFL make the right call in the Dolphins situation, or should they have just played at some neutral site here in Week 1 to give those two teams bye weeks later?
I'm going to take my cues from sort of what I've heard from inside those organizations, which is I don't hear a lot of hand-wringing or gnashing or, next day, Monday morning quarterbacking about it. They were involved in the decision. Ultimately, it was made in Park Avenue. But, the Dolphins in particular, what they're saying about this storm seems genuinely horrific.
Yes.
And for Adam Gase to basically on a Tuesday just be like, you know what I mean, we're out of here, like we're done practicing. Like, I think they'd probably, all things considered, rather be finding some place to go with their families to see this out, and this may be measured in weeks and not days, than to be flying to New Orleans, you know what I mean, haphazard on a Friday and trying to get this game in real fast in a very stale, awkward, weird environment, and then get back home as fast as possible, but then, geez, can we even fly back in? And what are the airlines like? And a lot of these guys' families might already be in Atlanta, you know what I mean, or Orlando or whatever, so then how am I going to get from here to there? And, you know what I mean? I just don't know that. From a football standpoint, you don't want to have to play 16 straight games. I understand that. But sometimes these things are just bigger than all of us and even bigger, than the monolithic NFL. And there was going to be no great option, but I think especially for the Dolphins players to be with their families and to just be able to sort of ride this thing out in safe haven and then get their marching orders from the organization next week probably made more sense than, worrying that everybody was okay and having people scattered all over the place, not with their families, and playing this game in Philadelphia or Atlanta or New Orleans or whatever.
Well, what about Week 2? I mean, is it wise just to send the whole team to San Diego now and just have them just ride it out there and practice for Week 2? I said San Diego, Los Angeles now.
Yeah,
they're playing the Chargers in Week 2. I mean, do they maybe they camp at Phillip Rivers' house and ride his Rivers mobile from San Diego to L.A. for Game 2, huh?
Or at least throw the quarterbacks in there.
That's right.
Cutler could use the extra study, I'm sure.
Yes, he could.
I'm not sure logistically what they're going to end up doing. Some guys may already not be in Miami, and then it's a matter of, where do we even send the plane? How do we do that as a group? I don't know. I'm not sure actually what their plans will be post-Sunday. It probably would make, whether it's, it doesn't even have to be L.A. Whether they didn't want to do that long of a flight right now. Like the 49ers, a lot of times when they have back-to-back East Coast trips because of the Bartolo family ties to, Youngstown or whatever, they would practice in Youngstown for 6 or 7 days or whatever.
Right.
Could it even be some other location? It could be. I mean, could they share a facility with an NFL team? Could they end up going to New Orleans for 5 or 6 days? Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot for them to sort through right now.
Injuries always pop their head up at this time of the year, and more will pop up, I'm sure, after week number 1. But 2 big names, 2 number 1 overall picks over the last 5 or 6 drafts. You got Andrew Luck. How long has he done, and how long is your most current number 1 pick done, Myles Garrett of the Browns?
Well, I don't think we see either player in September. I think they're both probably going to miss a quarter of the season, and then, we'll have to see. Luck isn't even practicing yet, and I never thought we'd see him in September. And at this point, I mean, he didn't have an off-season throwing program, much less OTAs, much less training camp. I mean, he just started tossing it a few weeks ago. I don't know how you go from 0 to 100. And the other thing is, how do you divide the labor? Like, if you really know in your heart, I would have just popped them. I know they thought that was the craziest thing in the world, but they're not winning any games this year anyway, or many. Mm-hmm. Then, so let's say he throws on the side for 2 weeks, and then he's ready to take 1 of every 5 reps on, the 3rd week or whatever. But they're also trying to win football games, and Scott Tolzien isn't the answer. And if they do switch to Jacoby Brissett, who they just traded for, well, he literally just got there. So he's going to need every rep possible to try to help you win that game next week. And if you really know you're not going to expose Luck to a hit for 4 to 6 weeks anyway, again, I know you can't practice on pup or whatever, but, I mean, how much is he really going to be doing in practice other than building up his arm strength and throwing a football and seeing how that rotator cuff and everything in that shoulder responds? I don't, again, if he plays in the first 4 weeks of the season, I'd be really surprised. Myles Garrett, I mean, it's an ankle sprain. It literally just happened. It's a fresh injury. He had one of these last year, missed a few weeks. I could see him missing 4 games and coming back, something like that. Those are often in the 4 to 6 week range. He's a young guy. I'd assume he's in pretty good shape, at least from what I was hearing at camp. He was in great shape. I was hearing that he was eating Joe Thomas's lunch regularly in practice. And this is not like after the injury and now everybody's telling these Paul Bunyan tales. Like this was weeks ago. So that's a big blow to them because that defense had a chance to be respectable and keep them in games. And him coming off the edge was going to be a big part of that. So that's a big blow for them.
We start in a few hours. I keep going back, and I've talked to Slickhawk and Hugh about this the last couple of days. I keep going back to how our perception of the New England Patriots could be very, very different going into this season. If our lasting image was instead of Tom Brady hoisting yet another trophy, it was Tom Brady aimlessly and awkwardly diving at the legs of a defensive back who was taking one of his interceptions back for the game-sealing touchdown. How would our perception of Tom Brady be different going into his 41-year-old season, and how would our perception of the Patriots as the favorites to win the Super Bowl again be different?
You're probably asking the wrong guy to test your theory because look, I'm a big believer in theirs, and I think they're always reinventing themselves. They're always getting better. They're always getting smarter, and they're always staying ahead of the curve. So even if that went down as Brady's worst Super Bowl outing instead of, his most miraculous comeback, I still would have been like, look what he's done the last 3 years. It's the best 3-year run of his career. I mean, you could take these last three, so you could take, age 38, age 39, age 40 season, or going into age 40 season, whatever. Like, go compare it to any 3-year chunk you could find, including the one with you take the 2 years around the almost undefeated year and that in the middle. This still stacks up on pretty much every metric. So There hasn't been a sign of decline. So him having a rough day against the Falcons, where they had to chase the game anyway and get out of what they wanted to do, I personally, it wouldn't be much of a blemish on to me. I mean, he's still, for my money, the greatest quarterback of all time. And I think the coach is going to go down as the greatest coach of all time. So it wouldn't have colored much for me, especially with their offseason. Had that been the sort of resounding note of that game, and then they go out and have an offseason where, they're in cap hell, which they never are, and they lose 5 starters, and they're not picking until the second round because they got stripped of another pick because of Spygate or Deflategate or whatever, then I might have bought it more. But go look what they did in the offseason. Go look what they did to their backfield. Go look what they did to their wide receiver room. They don't have anybody who can rush the passer, but I don't know if they're going to need it. If you're up 21-0 in the second quarter all the time, Bill Belichick's going to have no problem cultivating a pass rush when the other team's got to throw it 60 times.
Should be fun tonight, too. I mean, 3 of your colleagues, I'm looking at your CBS Sports predictions here, and 3 of your colleagues got the Chiefs win in the AFC West, and you got the Chiefs in last place in the AFC West. So
at one point I had the Chiefs winning. That division, to me...
It's toss-up, isn't it?
You could flip it. Like, I don't know, I'm not a math major. What are there? 16 possible permutations, 4 times 4.
Yeah.
Am I even doing that right? Like, you could give me any one of those 16 possible, like, who's first, second, third, or fourth, and I'd be like, I buy it. Like, I could make the case for any of them. It really was flipping a coin. I'm still not sure why I put Denver. Like, if I had to redo that today, I'd probably have the Chargers won.
Okay.
But I don't know. To me, Kansas City, I don't know about the pass rush with them either. And I'm not an Alex Smith guy. To me, the sooner they go to Mahomes, the better. And I just don't know about if you tell me Justin Houston is the 2014, Justin Houston, then I'd put them 1. But I haven't seen that Justin Houston in a few years. And without him and with Tom Bahali being long in the tooth and with D Ford being the only guy you really have to worry about off the edge, in that division where I think every team is pretty darn good, it was a coin toss. I put them 4th. They may win the division. I don't think anybody's below 500 in that division, or much below it.
Well, that's not the case with the Packers division and the Seahawks division, and they go head to head. You got them both winning their division. You have the Seahawks. Actually, the only.
I have the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl.
You got the Seahawks winning. You're one of the only person in your panel that have the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl. So, do you think the Seahawks win this week, or do they lose this week and still have the wherewithal to get that number 1 seed, which it looks like they need to get to the Super Bowl, because that's the only time they ever get to the Super Bowl, when they have the number 1 seed? What happens this Sunday in Green Bay?
Well, I would just say, how many times has New Orleans? How many times has New England won the Super Bowl without being the one? I don't think New England's won a road playoff game since 2004. So, I mean, that's kind of how it goes.
Right.
But no, I think they can win that game. I think they probably do win that game. They're coming into it healthy. I was out there talking to you guys right after Michael Bennett made his stand and sat down or kneeled or whatever for the preseason game against the Chargers. And I spent that whole day with that team and with Michael Bennett, and I came away completely convinced that this will not be a distraction. It will actually be a galvanizing force that makes this already, uniquely bound team even more together. And then you couple that with what he's now facing and how that team continues to rally around him. And I just think that the conversations they have, the things that they engage in, go well beyond football and continue to sort of bind them. And I don't know. I think this is their moment. I wish they had a left tackle. Again, New England doesn't have anybody who can rush the passer. Like, everybody's got warts, but I think the warts in Seattle and New England can be overcome. And overcome to a large degree. So I think they'll have more of a ball control offense. I think this is the year that Jimmy Graham earns his money. And defensively, the band's back together, right? I mean,
and back together better than ever with Sheldon Richardson.
And everybody's healthy, and everybody sort of has a common vision. I mean, look at that Richard Sherman thing. Like, people want to knock this team. Go find me another NFL team where that happens, right? Where they tell them we're going to shop you, and they're transparent about it the whole way through, and nobody comes close to giving them what they think is true football value, so they just have another man-to-man conversation, and it's squashed.
Absolutely.
Where else does that happen with a player of that magnitude, especially one who's generally that outspoken, right? Has anyone even brought that stuff up? No, and it's for good reason, because it truly is squashed. Like, I just don't. I mean, again, you guys, a lot of fans get it there, I think, but like it's special what they've built, and it's not over yet. And maybe I just drink a Kool-Aid, but I don't think that happens like other places. And they just, they put the Band-Aid back on, and he's all in, and they're all in, and it's like it never happened.
There we go. No, you're right, Jason. I got to run, man. We appreciate it, and I hope you're right, man. I hope we're talking about a Seahawks Patriots Super Bowl 6 months from now. Thanks, man.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one.
You bet. Jason Lockenfor, brought to you by Zeke's Pizza. We bring Hugh back in for the final half hour next. I need some help. I need some help from my good friend Hugh Millen because I've got a quarterback question that I think Hugh is more than capable of helping me with. I see a dichotomy of ideologies out there when it comes to Russell Wilson, our good friend Russell Wilson. I'm reading here a ESPN insider report that we alluded to and talked a tiny bit about yesterday with the different tiers of quarterbacks, and we talked about Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers receiving a perfect score. There were 50 executives, head coaches, assistant coaches that were asked to put all of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL in tiers. And Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers were the only two quarterbacks where every single one of the 50 put them in tier number 1. Then came Ben Roethlisberger, and they did an average, and the average of the 50 numbers, 1 through 4, the average came out to a 1.4 for Ben Roethlisberger, a 1.42 for Drew Brees, a 1.48 for Matt Ryan, a 1.72 for Andrew Luck, so he was put into the next tier because he's closer to 2 than he is to 1. A 1.90 for Derek Carr, a 1.96 for Phillip Rivers. There's a name we haven't heard yet. A 1.96 for Matthew Stafford, and a 2.08 for the 10th ranked quarterback in the NFL, Russell Wilson. Here are 50 guys that supposedly know a hell of a lot more about football than I do, and they have ranked Russell Wilson as the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. And then you've got the flip side. You've got a lot of national pundits, and I've heard many pundits saying Russell Wilson is an MVP contender, and in fact is one of my top 2 or 3 MVP. I've heard that numerous places. Russell Wilson is also number 1 in the history of the NFL in yards per attempt at 7.98, and he is number 2 in passer rating all time in the history of the NFL behind Aaron Rodgers. So Hugh, help me out here. Is Russell Wilson the elite of the elite? Or is Russell Wilson just an above-average good quarterback in the NFL?
Well, that's a different question than I thought you were going to ask. Okay. I thought you were going to ask me to theorize as to why he's 11.
Well, let's start there. Let's start there.
So you've heard the adage where coaches say, well, I got to see the tape, right? In a press conference post-game, they say, I don't really want to comment, I need to see the tape. And it really is a vital factor in people's analyzation. When you think of the other sports we watch, baseball in your mind's eye, it's such a great sport for radio because a good play-by-play guy can you in your mind's eye, you say, okay, man on first and second, there's 2 outs, infield is, are they back, they in, they describe the pitch, slider outside, ball, you in your mind's eye as you're hearing that, you can see that, right? Basketball, it's 5-on-5. It's easier to see. When you get 22 guys out there, there's a lot of things going on. And so I study the all 22 of the Seahawks. I would feel naked. I feel like watching a game take a toilet paper tube and watch a game. That's how I feel when I watch TV. It drives me crazy. I can't believe in 2017 that the TV hasn't, first of all, I mean, they don't have an option to see the all 22, all right? But ultimately I see it, and what that illuminates, here's my theory. What guys see, and that's how they study. All those guys on that list, they watch the all 22, and there are numerous times, frequent times, where Russell Wilson does not execute what would be considered baseline level reads, that He's not reading the coverage the way most quarterbacks are taught to read, and there's some simple routes where he's just not looking there and he doesn't see it, and you look and you say he's missing that. And so in that regard, in some ways, he is among the worst starting quarterbacks. And there are certain check boxes. If you take a lot of check boxes, go through the attributes of a quarterback, there are some attributes of his game where he is near the bottom. There are many, many attributes where he is at or near the top. He's the most elusive. He has a remarkable ability, as his quarterback rating indicates, to protect the football. For him to play at his height and to not have more just blind interceptions, I think is staggering. His ability to generate the big plays. So he has a very unique way of quarterbacking. It's like what you're talking about when you're comparing him to other guys. It's like saying, raspberry, strawberry, grape, sofa. Right. And which is not like the other. Remember that when you're in preschool, right? So
Sesame
he's
Street.
Before Sesame Street, right? Toddlers, right? So he is out of the box. And people don't really, when you ask somebody to rank, they say, okay, well, he's really bad in a couple of attributes and he's really elite in other attributes. And then you kind of say, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And
you're saying it's easier to compare an Aaron Rodgers with Matt Ryan than it is to compare an Aaron Rodgers and a Russell Wilson.
Yeah. Seattle allowed 17 or fewer points in 54 of Wilson's 92 career starts, counting playoffs. That's 59%, the highest rate for any of the 30 quarterbacks with at least 30 starts since 2012, Wilson's rookie season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a perception that Wilson has been linked with a great running game and an elite historic defense, and so less is asked of him, and so that for example, he can have the benefit of a running game, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's great in play action. He strikes and he gets the big play out of play action, and thus his yards per attempt goes up.
Okay,
right. And
he's scrambling for his life, buying himself time, which other quarterbacks can't do, which allows wide receivers to run their routes and then break open for 4, 5, 6 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I'll just tell you my own analysis of him as a guy who can elude. Okay, first of all, his physical skill set. Probably the most elusive quarterback in the NFL, just in terms of playing tag out in recess.
Yep.
Get in a chicken pen with Rocky and go try and catch a rooster. I mean, he's
right.
He just obviously his height is a contributor to that, but he's a tremendous athlete. He was at least a minor league baseball player. You can see he's just a tremendous athlete. I'm sure there's a million. You put this way, you want him on the family picnic. He could probably ping pong. I don't know. He just has that look. He's a great athlete. We know he's elusive. When he's playing, when he is just facing a 4-man rush, which is the standard rush in the NFL, and if one of his guys gets beat on a 4-man rush, Russell Wilson's then ability to quickly to respond to pressure and avoid that sack and do his Fran Tarkenton routine and create a new play and play off the script is brilliant. That, in my mind, is a different category than how he handles blitz, because the Peyton Mannings, the Aaron Rodgers, the Tom Brady's of the world, they have these lofty ratings against the blitz, and they do it a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And they change plays. They redirect protection. Tom Brady operates out of empty protection where he has no running back help, but he's so brilliant at recognizing blitzes and changing line calls, making his Linda calls, making his Rita calls, bringing somebody back into the core formation on occasion. He can't do that all the time. Knowing where his outlets are, looking to a 3-receiver concept, and then knowing that he's got a hitch out on the far left, and he doesn't even want to think about the hitch, but if he has pressure, boom, he drills it out there. So those guys avoid sacks in blitz situations a different way than Russell. That's different than the 4-man rush.
And I want to talk a little bit about his counterpart, Aaron Rodgers, in the next segment as we wrap things up before Chuck and Puck. And there was a number, you mentioned a great number on Russell Wilson. There was an amazing number I'd read yesterday on Aaron Rodgers that we'll get to in just a moment as we wrap things up.
By the way, I think Russell
segment.
is closer to top 6, maybe 8. I think whatever they did on that poll,
was
I don't
too
agree
low.
with that.
Was too low. Final segment coming up next. Good Lord, Slick. I already have Niner Nate talking smack about next week's game against San Francisco.
What smack could he possibly be talking about?
He says the Niners offense, the vaunted Niners offense, will put up 17 points at CenturyLink Field against the Seahawks defense next week. So, and
did you tell him to shut up?
No, I told him to put his money where his mouth is.
Did you ask him if he even knows who his starting quarterback? Because I don't.
I told him to put his money where his mouth is what I told him. I'm going to get myself a free lunch after that.
Who's the starting quarterback in San Francisco?
You.
Honestly.
You're going to start. They haven't told you yet?
Do you know? Do you know?
Yeah, is it McCown? No. Who is it? I don't even know.
For
the 49ers.
The 49ers starting quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, it's he just said it.
Brian Hoyer?
Yeah, it's Brian Hoyer.
Brian Hoyer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hugh, I got a stat for you. You got a stat for me. We were talking about how Russell gets it done in a different way than the other quarterbacks, avoiding the sacks, making plays in a different way than the other quarterback. You got a stat to back that up.
Yeah, because look, with the state of the offensive line, I'm thrilled that Russell. It almost seems self-evident that you need a guy with that type of athleticism. There is an interesting component when you take the top. Here's what I did. Now, I did this at some point, I think last year. This is slightly out of date, but it's essentially going to be the point is going to be made. Take the top 10 quarterbacks in terms of rushing yards per game. Okay, these are generally, so it's a way to say these are the most athletic guys. In order: Michael Vick, Cam Newton, Robert Griffin, Russell Wilson at 38 yards per game is 4th all time. Terrell Pryor, Colin Kaepernick, Randall Cunningham, Bobby Douglas, Tim Tebow, Dante Culpepper, Steve Young, and Tyrod Taylor. Okay. Their sacks, pass attempts per sack, averages 10.07. Every time, 1 out of 10.
1 out of 10 times.
1 out of 10, and nobody. The best among them is Cam Newton at 13.1.
1 out of every 13. Okay.
Now take the top 5 where you consider passer quarterbacks, passing guys that don't have mobility, right? That are going to be sitting ducks back there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Dan Marino, Drew Brees, Tom Brady. The top 5 yardage guys in the history of the league.
Yep.
Their average. They have 25.02 passes per sack.
Wow. Double. More than double the average of the mobile guys.
The most, Brett Favre is the most athletic of them. He was at 19.4, but you got Peyton Manning at 1 sack every 31 pass attempts. You got Dan Marino at 1 sack, exactly 31.0. Drew Brees, 24.4. Tom Brady is also at 19.4. Again,
because they get the ball out before
they
the
do it a different way. Yeah. They change protections. They audibilize. They know where their hots are. Their entire life, they've never been able to scramble out of trouble. In high school, no coach said, "Hey, if your first guy isn't open, just run." They've always had to stay and find a way to avoid sacks a different way. And so when I talk about Russell Wilson's ability, and I say more the 4-man rush. Look, there's times where just impulsively he is going to create an ability to avoid that sack that other guys cannot do. Okay, but the blitz again is the area where some of the packet passers that have accumulated the very best of the best,
mm-hmm.
they do it. We all can see they don't have the legs to run around and create those kind of plays with their athleticism. They do it in a way that you'd have to go back and hit rewind to watch what they did to avoid those sacks.
I got one with Aaron Rodgers. We don't have time to really delve into it, but I'll bring it back up in the 6 o'clock hour tomorrow with you because I want to get your take on how Aaron Rodgers gets it done. And we'll just chew on this stat as we go to Chuck and Puck. 11 quarterbacks have thrown as many or more touchdowns than Aaron Rodgers, 297. Rodgers not only has thrown the fewest interceptions of any of those quarterbacks that have 297 or more, but if you double his interception total from 72 to 144, he would still have fewer interceptions than any of the other 11. That is unbelievable. That's what the Hawks have to go against on Sunday, and we will talk about it tomorrow in the Geico Football Friday, our first Geico Football Friday of the year, which will include Rick Neuheisel.
Yep.
It will include Seahawks at 7 with Greg Bell. It will include Peter King, correct?
Yes, Peter King.
All right. It will include Hughes X's and O's.
It will include Factor Fiction.
It will include Mike Holmgren in studio.
No,
not in studio. On the phone. I'm sorry. And it will include the Score Prediction Challenge.
That's all correct.
Oh, my God. Too much to get to tomorrow.
Geico Football Friday is back
on 950 KJR. Chuck and Bucker next.